Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto became an Espada captain and ruled Hueco Mundo. Naruto x Yoruichi x tier Harribel, Bleach. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Arrival and Ascension Sand. Endless white sand under a black sky. That's what Naruto felt against his face as consciousness crept back to him. His head pounded like Sakura had used it for target practice, and every muscle screamed in protest as he pushed himself up. What the hell, he mumbled, blinking as his vision cleared. The landscape stretched forever in all directions, just dunes of pale sand under a night sky without stars. Only a crescent moon hung motionless overhead, casting everything in ghostly light. Naruto patted himself down. His orange and black outfit was torn in places but mostly intact. His headband still rested on his forehead. But something felt different. His chakra buzzed and flowed strangely, like it had been mixed with something else entirely. Kurama? You there? The familiar rumble of the nine tails stirred within him, but it wasn't the same. The connection felt altered, as though they'd both been dunked in something that changed their very nature. Something's wrong, Kit. This isn't our world. No kidding. Naruto stood, swaying slightly. Last thing I remember was fighting Kaguya, and then, a distant howl interrupted him. Not like any animal he'd heard before. It echoed across the dunes, sending chills up his spine. We're not alone. Naruto squinted into the distance. A massive black shape loomed against the horizon, moving toward him with unnatural speed. As it got closer, he could make out its form, enormous, at least the size of a small building, with a white mask where its face should be. What the hell is that thing? I don't know, but it's hungry. And we smell like dinner. The monster let out another bone-chilling howl. Naruto could see it clearly now, a towering black figure with a hole clean through its chest and a bone-white mask with a long, pointed nose. Well, if it wants to eat, it'll have to work for it. Naruto cracked his knuckles, settling into a fighting stance. The strange new energy inside him swirled and mingled with his familiar chakra. Time to figure out where we are. The creature charged, its massive arms sweeping forward to crush him. Naruto leapt high, much higher than he expected, sailing 20 feet into the air with ease. His body felt lighter, stronger. Whoa. Okay, that's new. He formed the familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen clones popped into existence around him, but they appeared different than usual. Translucent blue energy outlined their bodies, and their movements left faint trails in the air. The monster swatted at the clones, destroying 3 with a single sweep of its arm. They didn't poof away with smoke as usual, instead, they dispersed into particles of blue light. Man, everything's weird here. Naruto called as he and his remaining clones surrounded the creature. Let's see what else works. He thrust his hand forward, focusing chakra into his palm. A familiar spiraling sphere formed, but it was now tinged with blue-white energy that crackled and sparked. Rasengan. Naruto slammed the attack into the monster's leg. The impact was explosive, much more powerful than his normal Rasengan. The creature's limb disintegrated entirely, and it crashed to the sand with an earth-shaking thud. Did you see that, Kurama? That was at least twice as strong. Your chakra is mixing with the energy of this world. Be careful, we don't know the side effects. The monster wasn't finished. It dragged itself toward Naruto, mouth of its mask opening to reveal rows of teeth. A red light began forming between its jaws. I don't like the look of that. Move. Naruto dove aside as the creature fired a massive red beam that carved a trench through the sand. Where he'd been standing, the heat of it singeing the air. Okay, that's definitely not a jutsu I recognize. The monster charged another beam. This time, Naruto didn't dodge. Instead, he summoned more of the strange hybrid chakra, feeling it swirl through his system. Let's try something. He extended his hand, and to his surprise, similar red-black energy gathered in his palm. Acting on instinct, he thrust his hand forward, releasing a concentrated beam that collided with the monster's attack midair. The energies struggled against each other before Naruto's overwhelmed the creatures. His beam pierced through, striking the monster's white mask. With a final howl, the creature dissolved into particles that scattered on the wind. Naruto stood in stunned silence, looking at his hand. Did I just copy that thing's attack? This world is changing us, Kit. Your body is adapting to the ambient energy. We need to figure out where we are fast. Naruto nodded, surveying the endless desert. In the distance, something caught his eye, a massive structure that looked like a fortress or palace, stark white against the black sky. Well, that's the only landmark I can see. Guess we're heading there. He set off across the sand, mind racing. Wherever he was, whatever had happened during that final clash with Kaguya, one thing was clear, he needed answers, and fast. 3 more of the masked monsters, Jillians, he'd heard one smaller creature call them before he defeated it, fell before Naruto reached the outskirts of the massive structure. Each battle taught him something new about his transformed abilities. His chakra reserves were enormous, even by his standards. His physical strength and speed had increased dramatically. And somehow, he could sense the presence of others across vast distances, feeling their energy signatures like beacons in the night. The massive white fortress loomed before him, stretching impossibly high. Its walls gleamed under the crescent moon, unmarred and pristine. Las Noches, Naruto muttered, recalling the name from the babbling of a smaller hollow he'd spared. Home of the Arrancar and Espada, whatever those are. There are powerful beings inside. I can sense them. Yeah, me too. Naruto's new senses picked up dozens of energy signatures, some barely noticeable, others overwhelming. But we need information, and this seems like the center of everything in this desert. He approached the massive wall, looking for an entrance. Finding none, he shrugged. Guess we make our own door. Before he could act, a figure appeared atop the wall, humanoid but with strange fragments of bone-like material on his face. His eyes widened at the sight of Naruto. Intruder, the figure called out. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Naruto raised his hands in a placating gesture. Hey, I'm just looking for information. I woke up in this desert and, a blade of red energy shot toward him. Naruto sidestepped it easily, frowning. Not big on conversation, are you? 3 more figures appeared, all with fragments of bone masks and holes somewhere on their bodies. They wore white uniforms of varying styles, and each held a sword. An unknown spiritual pressure, one said. Not Shinigami, not hollow, not human. Kill it before it reaches Las Noches proper, another ordered. They attacked in unison, moving with impressive speed. But to Naruto, who had fought gods and tailed beasts, they might as well have been moving through water. He ducked under the first slash, caught the second attacker's wrist, and flipped over the third. Landing lightly, he twisted to avoid a follow-up strike. I don't want to fight you guys, Naruto called out. I just need to know where I am and what's going on. Die, intruder. The first attacker charged, sword raised high. Naruto sighed. Fine, have it your way. His movement blurred as he stepped forward, appearing behind the charging attacker. A light chop to the neck, and the figure crumpled unconscious. The others froze, shock evident on their faces. He just used Sonido. But he's not Arrancar. Did you see how fast? Naruto didn't let them finish. In seconds, all 3 lay unconscious at his feet. He hadn't killed them, something told him these weren't simply monsters like the ones in the desert. Sorry about that, he said to their unconscious forms. But you guys really need to work on your welcome committee. He turned his attention to the wall. With a casual leap, he bounded to the top in a single jump, landing on the wide walkway that ran along its length. From this vantage point, he could see inside Las Noches. The structure was far larger than it appeared from outside, an entire city could fit inside its walls. Multiple towers and domes rose from the central area, all gleaming white. "Whoa," Naruto whispered. "This place is huge." A slow clap echoed behind him. "Impressive," said a rough male voice. "You took out those 4 without breaking a sweat." Naruto turned to find a man standing a dozen paces away. He had blue hair, the remnants of what looked like a jawbone on the right side of his face, and piercing eyes filled with bloodlust. His spiritual pressure was on another level compared to the guards, wild, aggressive, and powerful. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, instinctively shifting into a defensive stance. The blue-haired man grinned, revealing sharp canines. "Grimmjow Jagerjax, Sexta Espada." He drew his sword with a flourish. "And you're about to be dead meat, whatever the hell you are." Naruto barely had time to blink before Grimmjow was on him, sword slashing toward his throat. He bent backward, the blade missing his nose by millimeters, then sprang away to create distance. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I didn't come here looking for a fight." "Too bad," Grimmjow laughed, "because you found one." The Espada moved with incredible speed, appearing beside Naruto with another vicious slash. This time, Naruto met the blade with a kunai, reinforced with his hybrid chakra. Sparks flew as the weapons clashed. "You're fast," Grimmjow acknowledged, grinning wider. "But are you strong?" He disengaged and thrust his palm forward. "Zero." A massive red beam erupted from his hand, similar to what the giant monsters had fired but far more concentrated and powerful. Naruto countered with his own newly discovered version, the energies colliding in a spectacular explosion that shook the wall beneath them. When the smoke cleared, both stood unharmed, sizing each other up. "What the hell are you?" Grimmjow demanded, excitement gleaming in his eyes. "You're not Arrancar, not Shinigami. I told you, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf Village." Naruto crossed his arms. "And I really just want some answers about where I am and what's going on." "A fight first," Grimmjow insisted, falling into a stance. "Then maybe answers, if you survive." He charged again, but this time Naruto was ready. As Grimmjow closed in, Naruto created 3 shadow clones that immediately surrounded the Espada. "What the?" Grimmjow slashed through one clone, only for it to burst into that strange blue light again. The distraction cost him as another clone landed a solid kick to his ribs, sending him skidding backward along the wall. Grimmjow recovered quickly, eyes wide with a mixture of rage and excitement. "Interesting trick. But playtime's over." He raised his sword. Grind, Pantera. An explosion of spiritual pressure erupted around him, wind whipping violently outward. When it cleared, Grimmjow had transformed. His body was covered in a bone-like armor, his hands ending in sharp claws, his hair longer, his ears elongated like a cat's. "Now," he growled, voice distorted, "let's see what you're really made of." His speed doubled, maybe tripled. Naruto's remaining clones were destroyed in an eye blink, and a clawed hand closed around his throat, lifting him off the ground. "Is that all you've got?" Grimmjow snarled. Naruto's response was a grin and a puff of smoke as he substituted with a piece of debris from their earlier clash. The real Naruto appeared above Grimmjow, descending with a Rasengan charged in each hand. Rasengan barrage. Grimmjow dodged one but couldn't avoid the second, which crashed into his shoulder. The impact sent him hurtling through the wall, debris raining down as he created a Grimmjow-shaped hole in the once pristine barrier. Naruto landed and peered through the hole. "You okay in there?" "I didn't use full power, but that had to." A blur of motion was his only warning before Grimmjow reappeared, slashing with his claws. Naruto backflipped away, but not before 3 parallel cuts opened across his chest, tearing through his jacket and drawing blood. "First blood to me," Grimmjow laughed, licking crimson from his claws. You're tough, Naruto Uzumaki, but you're in my world now. The wound stung, but Naruto felt it healing almost immediately, faster than even his normal accelerated healing. The hybrid energy swirled around the cuts, closing them before his eyes. High-speed regeneration. Grimmjow's eyes widened. Just what the hell are you? I told you, I'm a shinobi, Naruto replied, his voice lowering as he tapped into more of his power. Golden chakra began to envelop him, mixing with the blue-white energy of this world. And I'm getting tired of being attacked when I'm just looking for answers. The transformation wasn't his usual Ninetales chakra mode. Instead, the golden chakra formed a partial exoskeleton around him, with elements that resembled both his tailed beast form and the bone-like protrusions of the creatures he'd fought. 9 translucent tails of golden blue energy swayed behind him. Grimmjow's expression shifted from confidence to wariness. That spiritual pressure, it's like nothing I've ever felt. Naruto vanished from sight, reappearing directly in front of the Espada. A golden-clad fist crashed into Grimmjow's jaw, sending him flying upward. Naruto followed, moving so fast he left afterimages. Their battle became a blur of movement, too fast for normal eyes to follow. They clashed midair, separated, then clashed again, golden light against white armor, shock waves rippling outward with each impact. From a distance, perched atop one of Las Noches towers, a figure watched with intense interest. Tan skin, blonde hair, green eyes, and a high collar that covered the lower half of her face. Tear Harribel, Tercera Espada, observed the battle with calculating eyes. Fascinating, she murmured. He fights like no one I've ever seen. The battle culminated when Grimmjow, bleeding from multiple wounds despite his Resurrection form, gathered massive energy for a final attack. Gran Rey Zero, he roared, firing a blindingly powerful beam that could level mountains. Naruto didn't dodge. Instead, he extended both hands, channeling his hybrid energy into a massive spiraling sphere twice his size. Odama Rasengan. The attacks met with a catastrophic explosion that shook all of Las Noches. When the light faded and dust settled, Grimmjow lay embedded in the sand inside the fortress, his Resurrection shattered, reverting him to normal form. Naruto stood over him, golden aura still flickering around his body. He extended a hand. You done now? Because I'd really like those answers. Grimmjow stared at the offered hand, then at Naruto's face. Confusion replaced his usual aggression. Why don't you finish me? Why would I? I didn't come here to kill anyone. Grimmjow barked a harsh laugh. That's not how Hueco Mundo works, idiot. The strong devour the weak. It's our nature. Well, it's not mine, Naruto replied simply. Now, are you going to tell me where I am and what this place is, or do I need to find someone else to ask? Before Grimmjow could answer, a new voice cut through the air. I believe I can help with that. Naruto turned to find a dark-skinned woman with purple hair tied back in a ponytail, golden eyes that gleamed with intelligence, and an outfit that left little to the imagination, an orange overshirt with a black undershirt and tight black pants. She stood casually, but Naruto could sense tremendous power carefully controlled beneath her relaxed posture. And you are? He asked, keeping his golden aura active. Yoruichi Shihoin, she replied with a small smile. Former captain of Squad 2 and commander of the stealth force in Soul Society. She raised an eyebrow. And you've caused quite a stir with that spiritual pressure of yours. I felt it all the way from the world of the living. Soul Society. World of the living. Naruto frowned. Look, I'm completely lost here. 1 minute I was fighting in my world, the next I woke up in this desert. Yoruichi studied him with those penetrating golden eyes. You're not a hollow, not a Shinigami, and definitely not a normal human. Your spiritual pressure is, unlike anything I've ever encountered. I'm a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf village. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Hidden Leaf? Yoruichi looked genuinely puzzled. I've never heard of it, and I've been around a very long time. From the ground, Grimmjow pushed himself to his feet, ignoring Naruto's offered hand. He's strong, he said grudgingly to Yoruichi. Took my resurrection head on and beat me. I can see that, Yoruichi replied, amusement flickering in her eyes. You look terrible, Grimmjow. The Espada scowled. Watch yourself, Shinigami. Former Shinigami, she corrected lightly. And currently just an interested observer. She turned back to Naruto. You've managed to defeat a high-level Espada without understanding what an Espada even is. That's quite impressive. I still don't know what's going on, Naruto said, letting his transformation fade. The last thing I remember was a battle with a goddess named Kaguya. There was an explosion of energy, and then I woke up here. Interdimensional displacement, Yoruichi mused. Not unheard of, but very rare. She gestured around them. This is Hueco Mundo, the world of hollows, spirits that have lost their hearts and prey on other spirits. That structure behind you is Las Noches, former fortress of Sosuke Aizen. Former. Aizen was defeated some time ago, she explained. He had created an army of Arankar, hollows who had removed their masks and gained Shinigami-like powers. The Espada were his 10 strongest warriors. She nodded toward Grimmjow. Since his defeat, power struggles have been constant. And what are Shinigami? Naruto asked. Soul Reapers, Yoruichi said. They maintain the balance between worlds, guiding departed souls to soul society and purifying hollows. I was once among their ranks. Grimmjow spat on the ground. There are natural enemies. Shinigami and hollows have been at war since the beginning. Naruto absorbed this information, trying to make sense of it all. So I'm stuck in some kind of spirit world with monsters and death gods fighting each other. That's a simplistic way to put it, but essentially correct, Yoruichi nodded. Though you seem to have brought your own power with you, that energy you used isn't like anything from our world. It's mixing with the spiritual energy here, creating something new. Before Naruto could respond, another presence made itself known. The blonde woman Naruto had glimpsed earlier descended gracefully from above, landing a respectful distance away. Up close, he could see the fragment of mask covering her lower face and the tattoo of 3 on her right breast. Tercera Espada, Tier Harribel, she introduced herself formally. Her green eyes assessed him coolly. Your battle with Grimmjow was impressive. Naruto sensed she was even stronger than Grimmjow, but her energy felt different, controlled, calmer, less chaotic. Thanks, he replied. Though I was hoping to avoid fighting altogether. A strange sentiment in Hueco Mundo, Harribel remarked. Here, combat is how hierarchies are established. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. Naruto scratched the back of his head. But where I come from, fighting is about protecting people, not establishing dominance. Harribel's eyes narrowed slightly, as if puzzled by the concept. Yoruichi watched the exchange with interest. Las Noches has been in chaos since Aizen's defeat, Harribel said after a moment. Various factions vie for control. Your arrival, and display of power, will not go unnoticed. I'm not interested in taking over, Naruto assured her. I just need to figure out how to get home. That may not be possible, Yoruichi interjected gently. Interdimensional travel is extremely rare and usually irreversible. The words hit Naruto like a physical blow. You mean? I might be stuck here. Forever. It's a possibility you should prepare for, she confirmed. Naruto fell silent, the enormity of the situation sinking in. Everyone he knew, Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi, all his friends from the Leaf, might be lost to him forever. We'll find a way back, Kit, Kurama rumbled within him. But for now, we need to survive this world. Who are you talking to? Yoruichi asked sharply, her eyes focused on Naruto's face. Naruto blinked in surprise. You heard that? I heard nothing, Harribel said, her tone cautious. But your spiritual pressure fluctuated. I have someone else inside me, Naruto explained hesitantly. In my world, he's called the nine-tailed fox, a tailed beast sealed within me when I was a baby. His name is Kurama. A foreign soul entity sharing your body, Yoruichi mused. Fascinating. That might explain the unusual nature of your spiritual pressure. Grimjow, who had been silently licking his wounds, suddenly tensed. We've got company. Multiple spiritual pressures approached rapidly from different directions within Las Noches. Within moments, they were surrounded by various Arrancar of different strengths and appearances. What is this creature? Demanded one with a partial helmet-like mask. Why does it have such strange spiritual pressure? It defeated Grimjow, another whispered fearfully. Look at him. Grimjow snarled. Watch your mouth. The Arrancar were clearly divided, some looked ready to attack immediately, others seemed more cautious. Naruto sensed the volatile situation could explode into violence at any moment. Stand down, Harribel commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. This outsider has not come as an enemy. How can you know that? Harribel challenged a tall, thin Arrancar with a scythe-like weapon. It could be another Aizen, another would-be ruler to use us and discard us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered Arrancar. Naruto stepped forward, facing them directly. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm not from your world, and I didn't come here by choice. I'm not interested in ruling anything or anyone. Then why are you here, in the heart of Las Noches? The scythe wielder pressed. Because I need answers, Naruto replied honestly. And this seemed like the center of everything in this desert. He beat me fair and square, Grimjow admitted grudgingly, shocking everyone present. And then refused to kill me when he could have. This caused a stir among the Arrancar. In the world of hollows, mercy was almost unheard of. What do you want, Naruto Uzumaki? Harribel asked directly. Naruto thought for a moment. First, I want to understand this world better. Second, I need to figure out if there's a way home. And third. He looked around at the tense, distrustful faces. I want to help establish some kind of peace while I'm here. Fighting just for the sake of fighting seems pointless. Laughter erupted from several of the Arrancar. Peace. In Hueco Mundo. The scythe wielder sneered. You understand nothing of our nature. Maybe not, Naruto conceded. But I understand what endless conflict leads to. In my world, we nearly destroyed everything with our constant wars. It took uniting against a common enemy to finally understand each other. His words caused some of the Arrancar to fall silent, contemplating. Yoruichi studied Naruto with renewed interest. You're either incredibly naive or surprisingly wise, she said quietly. I've been called both, Naruto admitted with a small smile. Harribel stepped forward. Las Noches needs leadership. The power vacuum since Aizen's defeat has led only to chaos and death. While your ideas seem unconventional, your strength is undeniable. She glanced at Grimjow. If you could defeat the Sexta Espada without full knowledge of your abilities in this world, you may be strong enough to establish order. Are you suggesting I take over? Naruto asked, surprised. I'm suggesting an alliance, Harribel clarified. My fraction and I control a significant portion of Las Noches. With your power and my knowledge of Hueco Mundo, we could stabilize the situation here. The proposition hung in the air. The assembled Arrancar waited for Naruto's response with expressions ranging from outrage to curiosity. An alliance, Naruto repeated slowly. Not based on fear or domination, but mutual protection and respect. Such concepts are foreign to many hollows, Harribel said. But yes, that is what I propose. Grimjow scoffed. You're both insane. Hollows follow strength, period. Then they will follow Naruto, Yoruichi interjected. He has demonstrated his strength by defeating you, Grimmjow. The blue-haired Espada couldn't argue with that logic, though his scowl deepened. I need time to think, Naruto said finally. This is all happening very fast. Harribel nodded. Of course. In the meantime, you are welcome in my territory within Las Noches. You will not be attacked there. And I'll stay to help you understand more about our world, Yoruichi added. Consider me your guide in this strange new reality. Why would you help me? Naruto asked her directly. You said yourself you're from Soul Society, not Hueco Mundo. Yoruichi's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say I'm curious about you, Naruto Uzumaki. And I've always had a soft spot for underdogs and lost causes. With that settled, the crowd of Arrancar began to disperse, many casting wary glances back at Naruto. Grimmjow lingered a moment longer. This isn't over between us, he said to Naruto. Next time, I won't underestimate you. Then he too vanished with a static-like sound that Naruto would later learn was called sonido. Harribel turned to leave as well. Come. I will show you to quarters where you can rest and recover. As they walked through the imposing halls of Las Noches, Naruto felt the weight of countless eyes watching him, some curious, others hostile. Whatever path he chose here would not be easy. So, Yoruichi said as they walked, tell me about this hidden leaf village of yours. I want to understand where you come from. And so, as they traversed the white corridors of Las Noches, Naruto began to share his story, unaware that his arrival had already set in motion events that would change Hueco Mundo forever. 3 days passed. Naruto explored Las Noches under Harribel's protection, learning about its structure, factions, and the complex politics that governed the Arrancar. Yoruichi proved an invaluable guide, explaining the relationship between the different spiritual worlds and the nature of the powers that existed here. So these Zanpakuto, Naruto said as they sat in a large chamber that had become his temporary quarters, they're like living weapons with their own spirits. Exactly, Yoruichi confirmed. Each Shinigami bonds with their Zanpakuto spirit. The stronger that bond, the more powerful their abilities become. And Arrancar have something similar. These Resurrection forms. Similar concept, different execution. When an Arrancar releases their Zanpakuto, they're essentially returning to their original hollow form, but with greater control and power. Naruto nodded, trying to absorb it all. It's still hard to wrap my head around. In my world, we use chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energy. Here, it's all spiritual. Your chakra seems to be adapting, merging with the ratio that makes up Hueco Mundo, Yoruichi observed. That's why your abilities are changing. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Naruto was on his feet instantly, sensing multiple spiritual pressures clashing violently. What's happening? Yoruichi's expression turned serious. Feels like an internal conflict. Quite common here lately. They rushed outside to find a battle in progress. A group of Arrancar loyal to Harribel were defending against a larger force led by the scythe-wielding Arrancar who had challenged Naruto days before. Ortiz, Yoruichi identified him. He controls a faction that believes hollows should return to their pure state, no alliances with outsiders, no hierarchy except that established through predation. The fighting was fierce, with casualties already visible on both sides. Harribel was nowhere to be seen. Where's Harribel? Naruto asked, scanning the battlefield. Meeting with her fraction in another section of Las Noches, a wounded Arrancar loyal to her gasped. Ortiz timed his attack when she was away. Coward, Naruto muttered. He stepped forward, channeling his hybrid energy until the golden aura surrounded him again. This ends now. He vanished in a burst of speed that even Yoruichi's experienced eyes barely tracked. Reappearing in the center of the battlefield, he released a pulse of spiritual pressure that forced everyone to their knees, halting the fighting instantly. Enough, his voice carried across the entire area. This pointless killing stops now. Ortiz struggled against the pressure, hatred in his eyes. You have no right to command us. You're not even a hollow. I'm not trying to command you, Naruto replied, moderating his spiritual pressure so they could breathe easier. I'm trying to stop you from destroying yourselves. Death is our way. Ortiz snarled. The strong devour the weak. That is the law of Hueco Mundo. And where has that gotten you? Naruto challenged. Endless conflict, no progress, just the same cycle of violence repeated forever. His words caused some of the attacking Arrancar to hesitate, looking uncertain. You speak of things you don't understand, Ortiz insisted, raising his scythe. Allow me to educate you. Reap, Segador. Spiritual pressure exploded around him as he entered his resurrection form. His body elongated, bone-like armor covering his torso and arms, his scythe merging with his right arm to become an enormous curved blade. His mask fragment expanded to cover half his face. Now you'll see the true power of a pure hollow. Ortiz attacked with surprising speed, his blade whistling through the air toward Naruto's neck. Without even raising his arms, Naruto tilted his head slightly, the blade passing harmlessly by. Is that all? He asked quietly. Enraged, Ortiz unleashed a flurry of slashes, each more powerful than the last. Naruto dodged them all with minimal movement, his expression calm. Stop mocking me. Ortiz roared, gathering red energy at the tip of his blade. Ciro Guadana. The energy shot forward, shaped like a crescent moon, cutting a path of destruction toward Naruto. This time, he didn't dodge. Instead, he raised one hand and caught the Ciro, compressing it into a small sphere in his palm. The assembled Arrancar watched in stunned silence. Even Yoruichi's eyes widened slightly. Fighting for the sake of fighting leads nowhere, Naruto said, still holding the compressed Ciro. Fighting to protect something precious, that's what gives you true strength. With a gentle motion, he extinguished the Ciro, crushing it into particles that scattered and faded. I didn't come here to rule Hueco Mundo. But I won't stand by while you tear each other apart over nothing. Ortiz trembled with rage and fear. What are you? I told you. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf Village. And now, he vanished, reappearing directly in front of Ortiz. I'm going to show you what real power looks like. A single palm strike to the chest sent Ortiz flying backward, his resurrection cracking and shattering. He crashed through a pillar and lay motionless on the ground, alive but thoroughly defeated. Naruto turned to address the rest of the Arrancar, both Ortiz's followers and Harribel's defenders. I don't want to fight any of you. But I will if I must. There's a better way forward than endless violence. And what way is that? Called a voice from the crowd. Naruto considered his answer carefully. Cooperation. Protection. Using strength to shield others, not just to destroy. That's how my village grew strong, not by each person fighting alone, but by standing together. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Such concepts were revolutionary in Hueco Mundo. Most hollows evolved by devouring others, someone pointed out. How would we grow stronger without that? There are other ways to grow, Naruto replied. Training, purpose, bonds with others. In my world, I gained my greatest power not by taking from others, but by working with them. As he spoke, he felt Harribel's spiritual pressure approaching rapidly. She appeared moments later with 3 female Arrancar at her side, her fraction, Naruto presumed. What has happened here? She demanded, surveying the battlefield and the defeated Ortiz. A disagreement, Yoruichi supplied with dry humor. Which Naruto resolved rather definitively. Harribel's green eyes found Naruto's blue ones. You defended my territory. I stopped pointless fighting, he corrected. I don't care about territory. One of Harribel's fraction, a dark-skinned woman with Amazon-like features, stepped forward aggressively. You should show more respect to Lady Harribel. Mila rose, Harribel cautioned. Silencing her subordinate. To Naruto, she said, your intervention is appreciated. Ortiz has been a disruptive force for some time. Naruto nodded, then addressed the still assembled Arrancar. Go back to your areas. Think about what I said. I'll be here if anyone wants to talk about a different way forward. Surprisingly, they obeyed, dispersing gradually until only Naruto, Yoruichi, Harribel, and her fraction remained. You've made quite an impression, Yoruichi noted with amusement. He crushed Ortiz's Ciro with his bare hand, one of the Arrancar whispered loudly to Harribel. Harribel studied Naruto with increased interest. Have you considered my proposal? About an alliance? I have, Naruto replied. And I'm willing, with a condition. Which is? That we work towards something better than what Hueco Mundo has now. Not just maintaining the status quo or gaining power, but creating a place where strength protects rather than dominates. Harribel was silent for a long moment. Such a concept is foreign to most hollows, she finally said. We are born of negative emotion, driven by hunger and emptiness. But you're more than that now, Naruto pointed out. You care about your fraction, protect your territory. That's already different from the mindless hollows in the desert. He's right, the smallest of Harribel's fraction piped up, a girl with blonde pigtails and heterochromatic eyes. Lady Harribel has always protected us. Silence, meaningly, Harribel said, but without heat. She returned her attention to Naruto. Your ideals are intriguing. Whether they can work here remains to be seen. Only one way to find out, Naruto replied with a small smile. So we have an alliance. Harribel extended her hand, a surprisingly human gesture. Naruto took it, feeling the strength in her grip. We do. Yoruichi watched the exchange with a calculating expression. Soul Society won't ignore this development. A powerful unknown entity forming an alliance with an Espada. They'll send someone to investigate eventually. Let them come, Naruto said confidently. Maybe we can make them allies too. Harribel's eyes reflected skepticism, but she didn't contradict him. Come. We should discuss our next steps in more secure surroundings. As they walked away from the battlefield, Naruto caught Yoruichi studying him intently. What? He asked. Nothing, she replied with a small smile. Just wondering if you might actually pull this off. Pull what off? Changing Hueco Mundo. Her golden eyes gleamed. It would be quite something to witness. Word of Naruto's victory over Ortiz spread quickly through Las Noches. Over the next weeks, Arrancar began approaching him, some out of curiosity, others seeking protection, a few even expressing interest in his ideas. Harribel provided a larger set of chambers for Naruto to use as both living quarters and a meeting place. Yoruichi continued to teach him about the spiritual worlds, occasionally sparring with him to help him refine his new abilities. Your speed is impressive, she commented after one such session, barely winded despite their intense training. But you still telegraph your movements too much. Old habits, Naruto admitted, stretching. In my world, combat was more about power than stealth. Power without precision is just wasted energy, she replied, demonstrating a flash step that left afterimages. Like this, minimum effort, maximum result. Naruto watched carefully, then attempted to replicate the technique. His version was rougher but still incredibly fast. Not bad, Yoruichi nodded approvingly. You learn quickly. I've always been a hands-on learner, Naruto grinned. Reading books never worked for me. Speaking of learning, Yoruichi said, shifting topics, have you thought about how to handle Grimmjow? He's been gathering supporters, telling everyone he's going to challenge you again. Naruto sighed. Yeah, I figured he would. He reminds me of someone from my world, always looking for the next fight, always wanting to prove himself the strongest. Grimmjow is dangerous, Yoruichi cautioned. And unlike your first encounter, he won't underestimate you this time. I don't want to fight him again if I can avoid it. You may not have a choice. In Hueco Mundo, leadership challenges are traditionally settled through combat. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of one of Harribel's fraction, the tomboyish one with short blue hair that Naruto now knew was named Apache. "Lady Harribel requests your presence," she said stiffly, clearly still uncertain about Naruto despite weeks of alliance. "There's been an incident at the eastern border of Las Noches." Naruto and Yoruichi exchanged glances before following Apache through the winding corridors. They found Harribel in a large chamber overlooking the eastern section of the fortress, her other two fraction, Mila Rose and Sung Sun, at her side. "What happened?" Naruto asked without preamble. "Jillians," Harribel replied, nodding toward the window. "Dozens of them, approaching Las Noches in formation." Naruto looked out to see exactly what she described, a veritable army of the towering masked creatures he'd first encountered in the desert, moving with unnatural coordination toward the fortress. "That's not normal behavior for Jillians, is it?" he asked, remembering Yoruichi's lessons about the different classes of hollows. "No," Harribel confirmed. "Jillians are typically mindless, acting on instinct alone. This level of coordination suggests control by a higher intelligence. Someone's using them as cannon fodder," Yoruichi concluded grimly. "Testing our defenses. Or creating a distraction," Sung Sun suggested, the sleeve of her uniform covering the lower half of her face as usual. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his senses. Beyond the massive spiritual pressure of the Jillian horde, he detected something else, a more refined, controlled presence, carefully concealed but still detectable to his heightened senses. "There's someone out there," he confirmed. "Watching, waiting." "Grimjow?" Mila Rose suggested. Harribel shook her head. "Not his style. He would challenge us directly." "It feels different," Naruto said, trying to articulate what his senses told him. "Not Arrancar, not hollow. Similar to Yoruichi's energy, but colder." Yoruichi's eyes narrowed. "A Shinigami. Soul Society's scout?" Harribel suggested. "Possibly." Yoruichi looked troubled. "They wouldn't normally use Jillians as pawns, though. That's not their way. Whatever it is, we need to deal with the immediate threat first," Naruto said decisively. "Those Jillians reach Las Noches, they'll cause significant damage, even if we can defeat them eventually." "Agreed," Harribel nodded. "My fraction and I will, let me handle it," Naruto interrupted. "You protect Las Noches in case this is a diversion." "Alone?" Mila Rose looked skeptical. "There are at least 30 Jillians out there." Naruto just smiled. "Trust me. This is the kind of thing I specialize in." Without waiting for further discussion, he leapt from the window, golden energy already enveloping his body as he fell toward the desert below. Landing with a burst of sand, he immediately dashed toward the approaching Jillian army. From above, Harribel and the others watched with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. "Is he always this impulsive?" Harribel asked Yoruichi. "Pretty much," Yoruichi replied with a small smile. "But I'd watch carefully if I were you. You're about to see something interesting." On the desert below, Naruto halted a few hundred yards from the Jillian formation. Their massive bodies blocked out the perpetual night sky of Hueco Mundo, red eyes gleaming behind their white masks. "All right," Naruto muttered to himself. "Let's show them what we can do, Kurama. About time. I've been getting bored." Golden blue energy erupted around Naruto, forming not just an aura but a complete transformation. 9 tails of pure energy swayed behind him, and spectral fox-like ears rose above his head. Elongated canines gleamed as he grinned. Shadow clone. Jutsu. With an explosion of smoke and spiritual pressure, not one but 50 perfect copies of Naruto in his transformed state appeared on the desert, surrounding the Jillian army. From the window above, Mila Rose's jaw dropped. "What the hell?" "Fascinating," Sung Sun murmured. "He can duplicate himself completely, each clone with significant spiritual pressure." Now you understand why I wanted you to see this, Yoruichi said to Harribel. He's not just powerful. He's versatile in a way I've never encountered before. On the battlefield, each Naruto clone formed a Rasengan enhanced with the hybrid spiritual chakra energy. The spiraling spheres grew, incorporating wind chakra until they resembled giant shuriken of pure energy. Rasen Shuriken, 50 voices called in unison. The attacks launched simultaneously from all directions, converging on the Jillian army. When they struck, the resulting explosion was cataclysmic, a dome of wind and spiritual energy that obliterated everything it touched. When the light faded and the sand settled, the Jillian army was simply gone. Not a trace remained except scattered particles of spiritual energy drifting on the wind. The original Naruto stood alone in the desert, his clones dismissed, scanning the horizon. After a moment, he turned and looked directly toward a distant dune where no one was visible. "I know you're there," he called out. "Show yourself." For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a whisper of movement, a figure appeared atop the dune, tall, slender, wearing a black kimono and white haori. Long black hair framed an aristocratic face with cold gray eyes. At his hip hung a sword with an ornate hilt. "Byakuya Kuchiki," Yoruichi breathed from the window. "Captain of Squad 6. This is more serious than I thought." The Shinigami captain regarded Naruto impassively from a distance. Neither moved to approach the other. Finally, Byakuya turned and vanished with a flash step so fast it was barely visible even to Naruto's enhanced senses. A warning, Harribel surmised. Soul Society is watching. More than watching, Yoruichi corrected grimly. Byakuya doesn't do reconnaissance. He's sent when decisions have already been made. What does that mean? Apache asked, tension evident in her voice. It means, Yoruichi replied, that Soul Society has deemed the situation in Hueco Mundo a threat. And they're preparing to do something about it. Naruto returned to Las Noches in a flash of golden light, landing gracefully in the chamber. "Did you see him?" he asked immediately. "Byakuya Kuchiki, captain of Squad 6, Yoruichi confirmed. "An old acquaintance of mine. Friend or foe?" Naruto asked directly. "Complicated," she replied. "But in this context, definitely foe. Soul Society views hollows as enemies to be purified, and Arrancar as abominations. Your alliance with Harribel, your growing influence here, they won't allow it to continue unchecked." Naruto absorbed this soberly. "So we'll have to fight them?" "Not necessarily," Yoruichi said thoughtfully. "Soul Society can be reasoned with, under the right circumstances. But first, we need to consolidate your position here." "She's right," Harribel agreed. "If we can present a unified Hueco Mundo, Soul Society might be more inclined to negotiate rather than attack." "How do we do that?" Naruto asked. "There are still factions that oppose us. You need to defeat Grimmjow," Mila Rose stated flatly. "He's the most vocal opposition, and he commands respect among the combat-focused Arrancar." "Not just defeat him," Sung Sun added. "You need to do it in a way that leaves no doubt about your superiority, but also demonstrates your different approach." Naruto nodded slowly. "I understand. I need to face him openly, on his terms, but win on mine." "Exactly," Yoruichi confirmed. "And soon, before Soul Society decides to intervene more directly." "How soon can we arrange this?" Naruto asked Harribel. "Immediately, if you wish. Grimmjow has been publicly calling for a rematch since your first encounter." Naruto's expression set in determination. "Then let's do it. Set up the challenge for tomorrow, in the most public location in Las Noches." "The Central Dome," Harribel suggested. "It can be seen from most of the fortress." "Perfect." Naruto's blue eyes gleamed with resolve. "Tomorrow, we end this internal conflict once and for all." As plans were made for the coming battle, none of them noticed the tiny hell butterfly that fluttered away from the window, carrying its message back to Soul Society. The central dome of Las Noches was massive, easily large enough to contain a small city. Its ceiling was enchanted to resemble the blue sky of the world of the living, a stark contrast to the eternal night of Hueco Mundo. Word of the challenge had spread like wildfire. Hundreds of Arrancar gathered to witness the battle, perched on various levels of the dome's interior like spectators in a colossal amphitheater. Naruto stood in the center of the arena-like space, dressed in a modified version of his usual orange and black outfit, now accented with white elements reminiscent of Arrancar attire. He waited calmly, hands at his sides, blue eyes scanning the crowd. Harribel and her fraction occupied a prominent position, clearly aligned with him. Scattered throughout were Arrancar who had joined their alliance over the past weeks, some openly supportive, others still wary but intrigued. Yoruichi stood apart, her position deliberately neutral. As a former Shinigami, she understood the importance of perception in what was about to occur. A ripple of excitement ran through the crowd as Grimmjow appeared at the opposite end of the dome. He walked slowly, confidently, his blue hair stark against the white uniforms of his supporters. His eyes never left Naruto as he approached. Finally, he called out, voice echoing in the cavernous space. A chance to settle things properly. This doesn't have to be a fight to the death, Grimmjow, Naruto replied evenly. Grimmjow's laugh was harsh. In Hueco Mundo, everything is a fight to the death. That's what you still don't understand. I understand more than you think, Naruto countered. I understand that endless conflict leads nowhere. That strength can be used for more than just destruction. Save your philosophy, Grimmjow sneered, drawing his sword. Actions are what matter here. He charged without further warning, blade gleaming as it slashed toward Naruto's throat. Naruto sidestepped, making no move to counter. Is this really what you want? He asked as Grimmjow pivoted for another attack. Just fighting forever, with no purpose beyond proving you're stronger than someone else. Shut up and fight. Grimmjow roared, unleashing a flurry of strikes. Each one missed as Naruto weaved between them. Effortlessly. I can do this all day, Naruto said calmly. But what's the point? Even if you win, what then? You rule until someone stronger comes along. Grimmjow's frustration mounted with each failed attack. Fight me seriously, damn you. Not until you listen, Naruto replied. I'm not here to take anything from you, Grimmjow. I'm offering something different, a chance to be part of something bigger than endless battle. Hollows live to fight. It's our nature. Maybe. But you're not just a hollow anymore. You're Arrancar, evolved, changed. Capable of more. Grimmjow's response was to leap back, raising his sword. Grind, Pantera. The explosion of spiritual pressure was even more intense than during their first battle. When it cleared, Grimmjow stood transformed in his Resurrection form, looking even more ferocious than before. Now, he growled, fight for real, or die where you stand. Naruto's expression remained calm. If that's what it takes for you to listen, fine. His transformation was more controlled this time, golden energy flowing smoothly around him, forming an aura that resembled armor. The 9 tails of energy appeared behind him, swaying with a life of their own. The crowd murmured in awe. Many had heard of Naruto's unique powers, but few had witnessed them directly. Grimmjow attacked with renewed fury, his speed nearly doubling in his released form. This time, Naruto matched him move for move. Their clashes created shock waves that rippled through the dome, forcing many spectators to brace themselves. You're holding back. Grimmjow accused as they separated after a particularly intense exchange. So are you, Naruto replied with surprising insight. You're fighting because you think you have to, not because you truly want to destroy me. Don't presume to know my mind. I don't need to read your mind. I can read your attacks. There's no killing intent behind them, just pride and frustration. Grimmjow's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in rage. You want killing intent? Fine. He gathered massive spiritual pressure between his claws, forming an attack far more powerful than a standard Zero. Gran Ray Zero. The devastating beam shot toward Naruto with enough power to vaporize anyone unfortunate enough to be caught in its path. But instead of dodging or countering, Naruto did something unexpected. He reached out with both hands and caught the Zero. The energy struggled against his grip, wild and destructive, threatening to explode. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Naruto gradually compressed the attack, condensing it until he held nothing but a small sphere of pulsing power in his palm. Power without purpose is just destruction, Naruto said, holding the compressed Zero up for all to see. But with purpose, even the most destructive force can be controlled, redirected, made useful. With a series of hand movements, he transformed the Zero energy, infusing it with his own chakra until it changed color, from red to golden. Then he released it harmlessly into the air above, where it dispersed in a shower of particles that rained down like gentle fireflies. The display left everyone speechless, including Grimmjow. What are you?" he asked, his aggressive stance faltering for the first time. "I told you," Naruto replied simply. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, from the Hidden Leaf Village. And I want to help create something better here in Hueco Mundo." He extended his hand, the golden aura still flickering around him. "You can be part of that, Grimmjow. Your strength, your pride, they don't have to be directed at tearing others down. They can build something instead." For a long moment, Grimmjow stared at the offered hand, conflict evident in his eyes. The entire dome held its collective breath. "This doesn't make sense," he finally said. "This isn't how Hueco Mundo works." "Maybe it's time for a change," Naruto suggested. "Aizen used you. He used all the Arrancar as tools for his ambition. I'm offering partnership instead." Grimmjow's resurrection faded, returning him to his normal form. His sword rematerialized in his hand, and for a tense moment, it seemed he might attack again. Instead, he slowly sheathed the blade. "I don't pledge loyalty to anyone," he said firmly. "Not Aizen, not you, not anyone. I'm not asking for loyalty," Naruto clarified. "I'm asking for cooperation. You keep your independence, your pride. All I ask is that you direct your strength toward our common enemies, not against each other." Grimmjow considered this, then gave a single, curt nod. "I can work with that. For now." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. And in front of hundreds of witnesses, it represented something unprecedented in Hueco Mundo: resolution without destruction, progress without defeat. The crowd erupted in reaction, some cheering, others murmuring in confusion or disapproval. But the significance was clear to all: a new order was taking shape in Las Noches. Harribel approached, her fraction following close behind. "Well done," she said quietly to Naruto. "You've accomplished in weeks what I thought impossible." "It's just the beginning," Naruto replied, letting his transformation fade. "We still have Soul Society to deal with." "And we will," Yoruichi said, joining them. Her expression was troubled despite the victory. "But I'm afraid that confrontation may come sooner than we expected." She nodded toward the upper reaches of the dome, where a small black butterfly fluttered, a hell butterfly, Soul Society's messenger. "They've been watching the whole time," she explained grimly. "Everything that just happened was reported directly to the Captain Commander." "Is that bad?" Naruto asked. "It could be," Yoruichi admitted. "What you're creating here challenges Soul Society's entire worldview about hollows and Arrancar. Some will see it as a threat that needs to be eliminated. Then we need to accelerate our plans," Harribel stated. "Consolidate our position, prepare our defenses. And open diplomatic channels if possible," Naruto added. "If we can talk to them, make them understand what we're trying to build here, some will listen," Yoruichi conceded. "Others won't. Soul Society is not monolithic in its thinking, despite appearances." Grimmjow, who had remained nearby, scoffed. "Diplomacy with Shinigami? You really are naive. Maybe, Naruto acknowledged with a small smile. But sometimes naivety changes things that cynicism can't touch. As they discussed strategy, more Arrancar approached, former neutrals now willing to align with the new alliance, even a few who had previously opposed them. Word of Naruto's victory, and more importantly, how he had achieved it, was spreading rapidly. Las Noches was transforming before their eyes. Not through conquest or destruction, but through something rarely seen in Hueco Mundo, hope. That night, as Naruto stood on a balcony overlooking the vast white sands of Hueco Mundo, Yoruichi joined him in companionable silence. "You did something remarkable today," she said after a while. "We're just getting started," Naruto replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. "There's so much more to do." "Yes," she agreed, following his gaze to where the crescent moon hung unchanging in the black sky. "But for the first time since I've known this place, I believe it might actually be possible." "What might be possible?" "Peace," Yoruichi said simply. "Real peace, not just the absence of conflict. Understanding between worlds that have been enemies since the beginning of time." Naruto smiled. "That's what I'm aiming for. In my world, we called it the will of fire, the belief that love is the key to peace." "Love," Yoruichi repeated, as if testing the word. "Not something you hear often in Hueco Mundo." "Maybe it should be," Naruto replied. Then, more softly, "I miss my home. My friends. But while I'm here, I'll do what I can to make this place better." "You're already succeeding," Yoruichi assured him. "And you're not alone in this fight." As if to emphasize her point, Harribel appeared at the entrance to the balcony. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all." Naruto welcomed her. "Just contemplating our next steps." Harribel joined them at the railing. "The response from within Las Noches has been overwhelming. Even some of the most traditional Arrancar are considering your ideas." "And Soul Society?" Naruto asked. "No direct communication yet," Yoruichi replied. "But my contacts in the world of the living report increased activity. They're gathering information, preparing." "Then so must we," Harribel stated firmly. Naruto nodded, determination filling him. "Tomorrow, we begin the real work of building a new Hueco Mundo. One that doesn't have to be an enemy of Soul Society, but can stand as its equal." As they stood together, the shinobi from another world, the exiled Shinigami, and the Espada, the impossible seemed suddenly within reach. And across the vastness of Hueco Mundo, the winds of change began to blow. Chapter 2, Forging Bonds. Sunrise didn't exist in Hueco Mundo. The crescent moon hung perpetually in the black sky, casting the same ghostly light across the white sands day after day. But inside Las Noches, change was happening faster than anyone could have imagined. 2 weeks after Naruto's public confrontation with Grimmjow, the massive fortress had transformed from a fractured collection of warring territories into something resembling an organized society. The central dome, once merely a grand battlefield, now served as a gathering place where Arrancar could bring concerns, settle disputes without bloodshed, and even trade the few goods valued in Hueco Mundo. "I still don't understand why they're lining up just to talk to you," Yoruichi remarked, watching from the sidelines as Naruto listened to an Arrancar describing trouble at the eastern border. "Because no one ever listened before," Harribel replied simply. She stood nearby, arms crossed over her chest, observing the proceedings with her usual calm demeanor. Aizen commanded. He never consulted. The queue of Arrancar waiting to speak with Naruto stretched across half the dome. Some came with complaints, others with suggestions, a few merely curious about the strange being who had established himself as a leader through methods no one in Hueco Mundo had seen before. "We'll send a patrol to investigate these disappearances," Naruto was saying to the concerned Arrancar. "If something's hunting in that area, we'll find it and deal with it." The Arrancar bowed, another unprecedented gesture in Hueco Mundo, and moved away. Naruto stretched, then spotted Yoruichi and Harribel watching. Taking a break, he announced to the waiting line, then jogged over to his allies. This is harder than fighting Jillians all day. Leadership usually is, Yoruichi said with amusement. And you've been at it since dawn, or what passes for dawn here. Any updates from your scouts? Naruto asked Harribel. Several, she confirmed. The news of our alliance has spread throughout Hueco Mundo. Many Arrancar who lived in the outskirts are migrating toward Las Noches. Seeking protection. Yoruichi guessed. Seeking purpose, Harribel corrected. Hollows exist in constant hunger, constant emptiness. What you're offering, Naruto, a way to channel strength towards something beyond mere survival, it resonates in ways I hadn't anticipated. Naruto smiled, rubbing the back of his neck. That's great, but it also means more responsibility. We need to organize better if we're going to handle the influx. Already on it, a gruff voice interrupted. Grimjow approached, his usual scowl firmly in place. I've got patrols covering the major approaches to Las Noches. Anything bigger than a standard hollow, we track it. Since their confrontation, Grimjow had grudgingly integrated into Naruto's loose command structure. He'd appointed himself head of security, a role that suited his combative nature while giving him legitimate authority. Thanks, Grimjow. Any problems? Naruto asked. Nothing we couldn't handle, he replied with a predatory grin that suggested he'd personally handled whatever problems arose. Try not to kill everything that approaches, Harribel reminded him. Many are seeking sanctuary, not conflict. Grimjow scoffed but didn't argue. Even he had begun to see the benefits of Naruto's approach. Las Noches was more stable, resources flowed more freely, and he still got to fight when necessary. There's something else, Yoruichi interjected, her tone growing serious. I received a message from my contact in the world of the living. Soul Society is mobilizing. The atmosphere immediately tensed. Mobilizing how? Naruto asked. They've called a captain's meeting to discuss the Hueco Mundo situation. My contact couldn't get details, but the fact that all captains were summoned suggests they're planning something significant. We knew this was coming, Harribel stated calmly. Soul Society would never ignore a unified Hueco Mundo. What should we do? Grimjow demanded. Attack first? No, Naruto said firmly. That would just confirm their worst suspicions. We need to prepare, but not provoke. Prepare how? Harribel inquired. Even with our growing numbers, we cannot match the full might of the Godii 13. Naruto thought for a moment, blue eyes scanning the dome where hundreds of Arrancar now gathered daily. We need to show them we're not a threat, at least, not to them. We need to demonstrate that what we're building here is different. Soul Society has viewed hollows as enemies for thousands of years, Yoruichi cautioned. Changing that perception won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Naruto replied with a determined smile. But before we can convince them, we need to finish organizing here. Grimjow, keep your patrols vigilant but restrained. Harribel, can you work with the Arrancar to establish clearer territories and responsibilities? She nodded. Already in progress. Good. Yoruichi, any chance you can get more detailed intelligence on Soul Society's plans? The purple-haired woman smirked. I might have a few more contacts I can reach out to. Just don't ask how. I wouldn't dream of it, Naruto laughed. As they dispersed to their respective tasks, none of them noticed the small hell butterfly that fluttered near the dome's ceiling, observing everything and transmitting it directly to Soul Society. Unacceptable, Captain Commander Yamamoto's voice echoed through the meeting hall where all 13 captains had assembled. A unified hollow realm poses an existential threat to the balance of souls. The reports are concerning, Captain Yukitake agreed, his gentle voice a contrast to Yamamoto's thunderous tone. But they also suggest something unprecedented. These Arrancar aren't just unifying, they're organizing in a way that mimics civilization. Hollows cannot be civilized, Captain Soy Fon countered sharply. They are corrupted souls that must be purified. Any appearance of organization is merely a more efficient means of predation. Byakuya Kuchiki, who had observed Naruto's defeat of the Jillian army firsthand, remained silent, his gray eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. What of this leader? Captain Kairaku asked, adjusting his straw hat. This Naruto Uzumaki. The reports describe abilities unlike any we've encountered. An anomaly, Captain Kuratsuchi replied with disturbing enthusiasm. Neither hollow nor Shinigami nor human. I would very much like to study this specimen. The larger concern, Yamamoto interrupted, is Yoruichi Shihoin's involvement. A former captain aligning with hollow forces crosses a line that cannot be tolerated. Perhaps she has reasons, Yukitake suggested carefully. Yoruichi has always been unorthodox, but never treasonous. Intentions are irrelevant, Soifan snapped, though the mention of her former mentor caused a flicker of emotion to cross her face. The law is clear. Yamamoto slammed his staff against the floor, ending the debate. We require more information before taking action. Captain Kuchiki, you have observed this entity directly. What is your assessment? All eyes turned to Byakuya, who spoke for the first time since the meeting began. The spiritual pressure is unlike anything in our records. It contains elements of hollow energy but is fundamentally different, more integrated. His combat capabilities are exceptional. The Arrancar follow him not merely out of fear, but something resembling respect. And his intentions? Yukitake pressed. Unclear, Byakuya replied evenly. However, he had opportunities to attack me during my observation and did not. Instead, he called for me to show myself, as if seeking dialogue rather than conflict. A trap, obviously, Soifan scoffed. Perhaps, Byakuya conceded. But if so, an unusually subtle one for a hollow-aligned entity. Yamamoto considered this information, his ancient face set in grim lines. We cannot allow this situation to develop further unchecked. Captain Kuchiki, you will lead a force to Hueco Mundo. Assess the threat directly. If this Naruto and his Arrancar army pose a danger to Soul Society, you are authorized to eliminate them. And if they do not appear hostile? Yukitake asked quietly. Impossible, Soifan interjected. Then Captain Kuchiki will make that determination, Yamamoto declared. But make no mistake, the security of Soul Society is paramount. No risk will be tolerated. Byakuya bowed slightly. I understand, Captain Commander. When shall I depart? Immediately. Select officers from your division as you see fit. Captain Kuratsuchi will provide means to monitor and report your findings. And Yoruichi Shihoin? Soifan asked, unable to keep a personal note from her voice. Yamamoto's eyes narrowed. If she has indeed allied with enemies of Soul Society, she is to be considered a traitor and dealt with accordingly. The meeting concluded, and the captains dispersed. Byakuya walked silently toward the Squad 6 barracks, his mind already strategizing for the mission ahead. Unlike some of his colleagues, he had witnessed Naruto's power firsthand. This would require careful planning. And perhaps, though he would never admit it aloud, a more nuanced approach than simply attacking on sight. Back in Las Noches, Naruto sat cross-legged on the floor of his quarters, eyes closed in meditation. The room Harribel had provided was spacious but sparsely furnished, a bed, a table with chairs, and large windows overlooking the endless desert. He'd added little to the space, having few possessions in this new world. His consciousness drifted inward, to the familiar space where Kurama dwelled. But that space had changed since their arrival in Hueco Mundo. The traditional sewer-like mindscape had transformed into something more open, more integrated, a vast plain where Naruto and the Ninetales could interact as equals. Something's bothering you, Kit. Kurama observed as Naruto's consciousness manifested before him. The fox's form remained enormous but had gained subtle changes, traces of the white bone-like material characteristic of hollows framed his face, and his red eyes now contained flecks of gold similar to a hollow's. This world is changing us, Naruto replied, looking down at his own mindscape form, which now emitted a faint blue-white glow. I can feel it. Every day, our chakra meshes more with this spiritual energy. Is that a problem? Kurama asked, tail swishing thoughtfully. We're stronger here than we ever were in our world. It's not about strength, Naruto sighed. It's about identity, I guess. The longer we stay, the more we become something else. Something neither from our world nor fully of this one. Kurama chuckled, the sound rumbling across the mindscape. You humans and your existential crises. Power is power, Kit. And we have plenty of it. But to what end? Naruto pressed. Back home, I knew what I was fighting for, to protect my friends, my village, to become Hokage. Here you're building something new, Kurama pointed out. These Arankar, these hollows, they've never known anything but conflict and hunger. You're showing them another way. Isn't that worth fighting for? Naruto smiled slightly. When did you become so philosophical? I've always been wise beyond your comprehension, the fox sniffed haughtily. You were just too dim to notice. Their banter was interrupted by a knock at the door of Naruto's physical quarters. His consciousness snapped back to his body, eyes opening. Come in, he called. The door opened to reveal Yoruichi, her golden eyes bright with excitement. Get up, lazybones. Training time. Naruto groaned but rose to his feet. Their daily training sessions had become a ritual, Yoruichi helping him refine his control over his evolving abilities, teaching him the finer points of spiritual combat. What's on the menu today? More flash steps, he asked as they walked through the corridors of Las Noches. Something new, she replied with a mischievous smile. I think you're ready to learn some Kido. The magic stuff? I thought that was Shinigami only. Technically, yes, Yoruichi admitted. But your spiritual pressure has elements similar to Shinigami energy. I believe you can adapt the principles to your hybrid abilities. They arrived at a large, empty chamber that they'd been using as a training ground. Scorch marks and craters from previous sessions marred the otherwise pristine white walls and floor. Kido requires precise control and visualization, Yoruichi explained, demonstrating a stance with her arm extended. Watch carefully. She spoke an incantation, Heido 33, Sokatsui. And blue fire erupted from her palm, blasting a new crater in the far wall. Looks like my Rasengan, but with an incantation, Naruto observed. Similar concept, different execution, Yoruichi agreed. Your techniques channel energy through physical movements and what you call the chakra. Kido channels Reisha through precise incantations and mental focus. Do I need the words? They help focus the energy, especially for beginners. Eventually, a master can cast without incantation, but it's harder. Naruto positioned himself as she had demonstrated, extending his arm. Heido 33, Sokatsui. Nothing happened. You're trying to force it, Yoruichi observed, moving closer. Kido isn't about pushing energy out. It's about shaping it first, then releasing it. She stood behind him, adjusting his stance slightly. Feel the energy gather in your core, then direct it along your arm, visualizing the blue fire. Her proximity sent an unexpected warmth through Naruto that had nothing to do with spiritual energy. Her body pressed lightly against his back as she guided his arm, her voice low near his ear. Try again, she encouraged. But this time, feel the flow. Naruto tried to focus, acutely aware of Yoruichi's closeness. Heido 33, Sokatsui. This time, energy gathered at his palm, not the pure blue fire of Yoruichi's spell, but a swirling mixture of blue and gold that shot forward with tremendous force, blowing a hole not just in the wall but straight through to the next chamber. Oops, Naruto said sheepishly. Yoruichi stepped back, eyes wide with surprise. That was, not standard Sokatsui. Your hybrid energy modified the spell. Is that bad? Not bad, she mused, studying the destruction. Just different. You're not casting pure Kido, you're creating something new by filtering Kido principles through your unique energy. Naruto looked at his hand, still tingling from the release. Useful, though. Very, Yoruichi agreed with a grin. Let's try another one. For the next hour, they worked through various Kido spells. Each time, Naruto's version emerged transformed by his hybrid chakra, creating effects that surprised even Yoruichi. Some were more powerful, others more focused, all distinctly different from standard Shinigami spells. You're a quick study, Yoruichi remarked as they paused for breath. Most take years to master even basic Kido. I've always learned best by doing, Naruto replied, wiping sweat from his brow. Reading scrolls puts me to sleep, but show me once, and I can usually figure it out. Reminds me of someone else I know, Yoruichi said with a nostalgic smile. A young girl I once trained, all instinct, no patience for theory. Someone from Soul Society? Yoruichi nodded, a shadow passing over her face. My former lieutenant, Soi Fan. Brilliant, dedicated, absolutely lethal in combat. You miss her, Naruto observed gently. Sometimes, Yoruichi admitted. But we didn't part on the best terms. When I left Soul Society, she felt betrayed. Why did you leave? Yoruichi sat down on a block of rubble, golden eyes distant with memory. A friend needed help. He was being framed for crimes he didn't commit. Helping him meant becoming a fugitive myself. You didn't hesitate, did you? Naruto asked, already knowing the answer. Not for a second, she confirmed. Some choices transcend law or duty. That's something Soul Society has never fully understood, they value order above all else, even justice sometimes. And now you're helping another outsider, Naruto noted, sitting beside her. Seems to be a pattern with you. She laughed softly. I suppose it is. I've always had a weakness for lost causes and strays. Is that what I am? A stray? Their eyes met, golden to blue, and something unspoken passed between them. No, Yoruichi said quietly. You're something else entirely. The moment stretched, charged with tension neither had anticipated. Then the door burst open as Apache, one of Harribel's fraction, rushed in. Naruto. Lady Harribel needs you immediately, she announced breathlessly. The patrol at the western approach, they've detected multiple Shinigami spiritual pressures entering Hueco Mundo. The spell broken, Naruto and Yoruichi were on their feet instantly. How many? Yoruichi demanded. At least 10, one captain class, Apache reported. Lady Harribel is gathering our forces at the western gate. Tell her we're on our way, Naruto instructed. As Apache Flash stepped away, Naruto turned to Yoruichi. Looks like Soul Society made its decision. Seems that way, she agreed grimly. And from the spiritual pressure Apache described, I'm betting it's Byakuya leading them. The captain we saw before. Is he reasonable? Yoruichi's expression was complex. Byakuya Kuchiki is many things, proud, powerful, bound by duty and family honor. Reasonable depends entirely on what his orders are. Then we'd better hope his orders include talking before fighting, Naruto said as they raced toward the western gate. Yoruichi's lack of response was not reassuring. The western approach to Las Noches was a vast expanse of sand punctuated by occasional crystalline trees, perfect for defensive positioning. Harribel had arranged her forces strategically, with ranged fighters on elevated positions and close combat specialists forming a tiered defense. Naruto and Yoruichi arrived to find her issuing final instructions to her fraction. Status? Naruto asked without preamble. The Shinigami force has stopped just beyond the outer perimeter, Harribel reported calmly. They appear to be waiting rather than preparing for immediate assault. That's something, at least, Yoruichi murmured. Byakuya's not rushing in. Grimmjow? Naruto inquired, not seeing the blue-haired Espada. Positioned with the vanguard, and under strict orders not to attack first, Harribel replied, a hint of concern in her voice. Though how long he'll obey those orders is questionable. Naruto nodded, understanding the worry. Grimmjow's restraint had improved, but he still harbored deep hatred for Shinigami. I should go out to meet them, Naruto decided. Alone, as a show of good faith. Absolutely not, Harribel objected immediately. They could be here specifically to eliminate you. If that were their sole objective, they would have attacked already, Yoruichi pointed out. The fact that they're waiting suggests they want to assess the situation first. Even so, you shouldn't go alone, Harribel insisted. I'll accompany him, Yoruichi volunteered. Byakuya knows me. My presence might help, complicate things. Harribel clearly didn't like the plan but recognized the logic. Very well. But we'll maintain combat readiness. If they make any aggressive move, we'll handle it, Naruto assured her. He placed a hand briefly on her shoulder, a gesture of confidence that hadn't gone unnoticed by Yoruichi. Keep Grimmjow in check if you can. Last thing we need is him starting a war because he's bored. Harribel's green eyes met his, concern evident despite her composed demeanor. Be careful. Soul Society's captains are not to be underestimated. Neither am I, Naruto replied with a confident grin. Together, he and Yoruichi departed from Las Noches, walking steadily across the white sands toward the position where the Shinigami waited. As they approached, black-clad figures became visible, standing in formation around a central figure whose white haori marked him as a captain. Byakuya Kuchiki, Yoruichi confirmed quietly. And members of Squad 6, elite fighters all. Naruto nodded, studying the Shinigami captain. Even at a distance, Byakuya's spiritual pressure was impressive, controlled, refined, powerful. This was someone who had mastered his abilities through centuries of discipline. When they were about 50 yards from the Shinigami group, Byakuya raised a hand, signaling them to stop. His voice carried clearly across the remaining distance. Yoruichi Shihoin. Your presence confirms the reports. You have allied yourself with the anomaly and the hollows. Yoruichi stepped forward, her posture casual but ready. Hello to you. Too, Byakuya. Still formal as ever, I see. If the familiarity irritated him, Byakuya didn't show it. His gray eyes moved to Naruto. You are the entity known as Naruto Uzumaki. It wasn't a question, but Naruto answered anyway. I am. And you're Byakuya Kuchiki, captain of Squad 6, right? Correct. Byakuya's expression remained impassive. I have been authorized by the Captain Commander to assess the situation in Hueco Mundo and determine whether you pose a threat to Soul Society. We don't, Naruto stated plainly. We're not interested in conflict with Soul Society or anyone else. What we're building here is about stability, not conquest. Hollows exist to consume souls, Byakuya replied evenly. That fundamental nature cannot be changed through mere organization. With respect, Captain, Naruto countered, I've spent weeks with the Arrancar of Las Noches. They're more than just predators. They have thoughts, feelings, societies, complex identities beyond just hunting. An Arrancar is still a hollow at its core, Byakuya insisted. The mask may be broken, but the nature remains. And what about me? Yoruichi interjected. Has my nature changed because I stand here rather than there? She gestured between the Arrancar forces and the Shinigami. For the first time, something like emotion flickered in Byakuya's eyes. Your choices are your own, Yoruichi Shihoin. As are the consequences. Threatening a former captain. Yoruichi clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Soul Society's manners have deteriorated since I left. This isn't getting us anywhere, Naruto interrupted, focusing on Byakuya. You came to assess whether we're a threat. I'm telling you we're not. But words obviously aren't enough. So what evidence would convince you? Byakuya considered this for a moment. A demonstration, he finally said. Show me the nature of what you are building here. Fine, Naruto agreed. Come to Las Noches. See for yourself what we're creating. Bring your squad if it makes you feel safer, though I promise you won't need protection. You invite Shinigami into the heart of Hollow territory. Byakuya's tone suggested skepticism rather than surprise. We invite dialogue instead of conflict, Naruto clarified. Something I thought Soul Society might value. Soul Society values balance above all, Byakuya replied. And a unified Hueco Mundo under a power like yours threatens that balance. Or it creates a new kind of balance, Naruto suggested. One based on cooperation rather than eternal war. A naive concept. Maybe, Naruto shrugged. But I've seen the impossible happen before. So has Yoruichi, I'd guess. All I'm asking is that you look before you judge. Byakuya was silent for a long moment, weighing options. Finally, he gave a slight nod. I will observe. But be warned, if I determine your forces pose a threat to Soul Society, I am authorized to take immediate action. Fair enough, Naruto agreed. So am I, if your forces threaten Las Noches. The two leaders locked eyes across the desert, each taking the measure of the other. Finally, Byakuya turned to his squad. We will proceed to Las Noches. Maintain alert status, but take no aggressive action without my direct command. Yes, Captain, the Shinigami responded in unison. As they prepared to move, Yoruichi leaned close to Naruto. Well handled, she murmured. But getting him to Las Noches was the easy part. Convincing him once he's there will be much harder. One step at a time, Naruto replied quietly. At least we're talking instead of fighting. For now, Yoruichi cautioned. But with Grimmjow and the others on edge, and Byakuya's squad equally tense, we're walking a knife's edge. Story of my life, Naruto said with a wry smile. But hey, at least the view's interesting. The procession to Las Noches was tense, with Shinigami and Arrancar eyeing each other warily. Naruto walked alongside Byakuya, with Yoruichi flanking them, while the respective forces maintained a cautious distance behind. Your spiritual pressure is unusual, Byakuya observed as they walked. Neither hollow nor Shinigami, yet containing elements of both. I'm from another world, Naruto explained. When I arrived here, my chakra, my power, began adapting to this world's energy. Another world, Byakuya repeated, a hint of skepticism in his tone. And in your world, hollows and Shinigami do not exist. Nothing like them, Naruto confirmed. We had our own kinds of spirits and powers, but they worked differently. My power comes from chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energy. Byakuya seemed to consider this. And the entity within you? I can sense a second spiritual pressure intertwined with your own. Naruto's eyebrows rose in surprise. You can sense Kurama? If that is its name, yes. It has a distinct spiritual signature, powerful but contained. Kurama is a tailed beast, a living mass of chakra with consciousness and will. Where I come from, he was sealed inside me as a baby. A forced symbiosis, Byakuya noted. Yet you refer to this entity by name, with familiarity. We're partners now, Naruto said simply. Friends, even. It took years, but we found respect for each other. Interesting, was all Byakuya said in response, but his eyes studied Naruto with renewed intensity. They arrived at Las Noches to find Harribel and her forces had returned ahead of them, positioning themselves strategically throughout the entrance hall. Grimmjow stood at her side, barely containing his hostility toward the Shinigami. Welcome to Las Noches, Captain Kuchiki, Harribel greeted formally. Your presence here is unprecedented. As is yours, Espada, alongside a foreign entity rather than opposing one another, Byakuya replied coolly. Grimmjow took a step forward, hand on his sword. Just say the word, and I'll show them how we really welcome Shinigami. Stand down, Grimjow, Naruto ordered firmly. Captain Kachiki is here to observe, not fight. TCH, Grimjow scoffed but removed his hand from his weapon. I propose a tour, Naruto said to Byakuya. See what we've built here since I arrived. Judge for yourself whether it threatens Soul Society. Byakuya inclined his head slightly. Proceed. What followed was a carefully orchestrated demonstration of the new Las Noches. Naruto led Byakuya through the central dome where Arrancar now gathered peacefully, to the newly established living quarters where families of lesser hollows had begun settling, to training grounds where combat skills were honed for defense rather than predation. Throughout, Byakuya remained mostly silent, observing everything with those penetrating gray eyes. Occasionally he would ask a precise question about governance or resource allocation, but he revealed nothing of his assessment. And here, Naruto said as they reached their final destination, is what I'm most proud of. They stood at the entrance to a large chamber filled with what appeared to be very young hollows, small, mask-like faces with bodies still forming, being taught by older Arrancar. The newly transformed, Harribel explained. Once, they would have been left to fend for themselves or be devoured by stronger hollows. Now, we guide their development. You're raising them, Byakuya observed, surprise finally coloring his tone. Teaching them. Every soul deserves a chance, Naruto said simply. Even hollow souls. Byakuya watched the young hollows for a long moment. Soul Society has always held that hollows are beyond redemption, that purification by Zanpakuto is their only path to peace. And maybe that was true once, Naruto acknowledged. But these Arrancar have evolved beyond that state. They've recovered pieces of their humanity, their consciousness. They deserve the chance to build something better than endless hunger and conflict. A compelling argument, Byakuya admitted. Yet one that challenges thousands of years of Soul Society doctrine. Maybe some doctrines need challenging, Yoruichi suggested quietly. Before Byakuya could respond, a massive spiritual pressure suddenly shook Las Noches, so powerful that dust rained from the ceiling and smaller hollows cowered in fear. What was that? Naruto demanded, instantly alert. Unknown, Harribel replied, equally tense. But powerful, more powerful than anything I've felt since Aizen. Another tremor, stronger than the first, rippled through the fortress. This time, the pressure felt ancient, primal, a spiritual weight unlike anything Naruto had encountered before. Byakuya's hand moved to his Zanpakuto. This is not Shinigami doing. Nor Arrancar, Harribel confirmed, looking genuinely concerned. A member of Byakuya's squad flash stepped to his side. Captain. Reports of strange hollow activity throughout Hueco Mundo. They appear to be, changing, merging. Changing how? Naruto pressed. Hollows dissolving into black liquid, then reforming with white crystalline growths, the Shinigami reported tensely. They attack anything that moves, other hollows, our scouts, even each other. Another tremor shook Las Noches, and this time cracks appeared in the walls. We need to see this for ourselves, Naruto decided. Harribel, secure the fortress. Grimjow, organize defense teams. Byakuya. He paused, realizing he had no authority to order a Shinigami captain. To his surprise, Byakuya nodded. I will accompany you to investigate. Whatever this is, it appears to threaten all parties equally. I'm coming too, Yoruichi stated firmly. Together, the unlikely alliance of Naruto, Yoruichi, and Byakuya rushed to the outer walls of Las Noches. What they saw from the battlements froze them in place. The white sands of Hueco Mundo were transforming. Black liquid bubbled up from beneath the surface in dozens of locations, and wherever it touched, hollows writhed and transformed, their bodies twisting into new, grotesque forms. The transformed hollows moved with unnatural coordination, forming patterns across the desert. What the hell are they doing? Naruto muttered, watching the disturbing choreography. Yoruichi's golden eyes widened in realization. They're forming a seal, a massive keto pattern across the desert floor. A summoning circle, Byakuya confirmed grimly. Something is being called forth. Even as he spoke, the center of the pattern began to darken, sand sinking into a growing vortex. The spiritual pressure intensified, becoming almost unbearable. We need to stop this now, Naruto decided, golden energy already flaring around him as he prepared to leap from the wall. Byakuya's hand shot out, gripping his arm. Wait. We don't know what we're facing. Rushing in blindly would be foolish. So what's your plan? Naruto challenged. Stand here and watch. Observe first, Byakuya countered. Understand the threat before engaging it. As if responding to their debate, the vortex in the desert expanded dramatically, and from its depths emerged a colossal figure, humanoid but twisted, with a body that seemed to be composed of countless hollow masks fused together. Its head was a crown of broken masks surrounding a face of pure darkness, and where its heart should be, a void pulsed with negative energy. What is that? Naruto breathed. I don't know, Yoruichi admitted, her usual confidence shaken. Nothing in Soul Society's records matches this. The massive entity rose fully from the vortex, standing taller than Las Noches itself. When it spoke, the voice resonated directly in their minds, bypassing ears altogether. At last. Freedom. The seal weakens as the barriers between worlds thin. It's talking about you, Yoruichi realized, looking at Naruto. Your arrival from another dimension must have weakened some kind of cosmic barrier. The entity's void-like face turned toward Las Noches, focusing on the three figures on the wall. Interesting. Shinigami. Hollow. And something new. Something that does not belong. Who are you? Naruto called out, his voice empowered with spiritual energy to carry across the distance. I am the first. The origin. Before Hollow, before Shinigami, before the separation of worlds. What your kind would call the primordial Hollow. Byakuya's normally impassive face showed genuine alarm. The legends, they were true. What legends? Naruto demanded. Ancient texts speak of a time before Soul Society, before the division of spiritual realms, Byakuya explained tersely. When all spiritual energy existed in chaos, dominated by a single entity of pure hunger and emptiness. The original Hollow, Yoruichi breathed. The source from which all others eventually derived. Your understanding is incomplete, but sufficient, the entity confirmed. I was sealed away when the realms were divided, my power used to maintain the boundaries. But now, those boundaries weaken. It raised a massive hand, and every transformed hollow in the desert convulsed, then dissolved into black liquid that flowed toward the entity, being absorbed into its form. With each absorption, it grew larger, stronger. It's feeding on them, Naruto realized with horror. Using their spiritual energy to strengthen itself. We need to stop it before it reaches full power, Yoruichi urged. If the legends are even half true, this thing could destroy Soul Society and Hueco Mundo alike. The primordial hollow took a massive step toward Las Noches, each movement causing tremors throughout the realm. All will return to the origin. All boundaries will dissolve. All separation will end. Not on my watch, Naruto declared, golden chakra flaring around him in full nine-tailed form. I didn't come all this way to see this world destroyed. Byakuya drew his Zanpakuto in a fluid motion. It seems our assessment of threats has found a more immediate focus, Naruto Uzumaki. Temporary alliance. Naruto suggested, a determined grin spreading across his face despite the dire circumstances. Temporary alliance, Byakuya confirmed with the barest hint of a nod. Oh good, Yoruichi interjected, her body already glowing with the white energy of Shunko. I was worried you two would keep talking while that thing ate us all. The three leapt from the wall simultaneously, each trailing their distinctive energy, Naruto's golden chakra, Yoruichi's white lightning, and Byakuya's refined spiritual pressure. Behind them, Las Noches mobilized as Harribel and Grimjow led the Arrancar forces to defend their home. The battle for the very existence of Hueco Mundo had begun. The Primordial Hollow's first attack came not as a physical blow but as a wave of spiritual pressure so intense it threatened to crush them midair. Byakuya reacted instantly. Scatter, Senbenzakura. His blade dissolved into thousands of tiny pink petal-like blades that formed a shield against the pressure wave, allowing them to push through. Naruto summoned dozens of shadow clones, each blazing with golden energy that charged toward the entity's massive legs. Yoruichi vanished in a burst of speed, reappearing at the creature's side to deliver a Shunko-enhanced kick that would have shattered mountains. The attacks connected simultaneously, and did nothing. The Primordial Hollow didn't even flinch. Insignificant. Its massive hand swept through the air, dispelling Naruto's clones and sending Yoruichi hurtling backward. Byakuya flash-stepped to catch her before she crashed into the sands, his expression grave. Conventional attacks appear ineffective. No kidding, Yoruichi grimaced, wiping blood from her lip. That thing barely noticed us. Naruto landed beside them, already formulating a new approach. It's made of spiritual energy, right? Maybe we need to disrupt it at that level rather than trying to damage it physically. An astute observation, Byakuya acknowledged. But how do we disrupt an entity comprised of primordial spiritual energy? I might have an idea, Naruto said, eyes narrowed in concentration. Kurama and I, we're not native to this world. Our chakra is different, foreign to this realm's energy. Maybe we can use that somehow. The Primordial Hollow continued its advance toward Las Noches, where Arrancar forces had formed a defensive line. Harribel stood at the center, her spiritual pressure flaring as she prepared to release her resurrection. Whatever your plan is, make it quick, Yoruichi urged. Las Noches won't withstand a direct attack from that thing. I need to get close, Naruto explained. Really close, to its core, where that void-like heart is. Suicide, Byakuya stated flatly. Maybe, Naruto admitted. But I'm the only one whose energy might disrupt it from within. I need you two to create an opening, distract it long enough for me to get inside. Byakuya and Yoruichi exchanged glances, a century of shared history allowing them to communicate without words. We can do that, Yoruichi confirmed. But you'll have one chance, Naruto. Make it count. They split up, executing their hastily formed plan. Byakuya flash-stepped to a position directly in front of the Primordial Hollow. Bankai, Senbenzakura Kageyoshi. His sword dropped into the ground, and suddenly the air filled with millions of Sakura-like blades, swirling around the entity in a blinding pink vortex. Though they couldn't damage the creature, they obscured its vision and diverted its attention. Simultaneously, Yoruichi circled to the rear, her body fully enveloped in the white lightning of her perfected Shunko. With precision born of centuries of combat experience, she targeted the back of the entity's knees with concentrated strikes, forcing it to kneel momentarily. Now, Naruto, she called. Naruto, his body transformed into his most powerful state, Ninetales chakra mode enhanced by the spiritual energy of Hueco Mundo, launched himself directly at the void in the creature's chest. His hands formed a familiar sign. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Hundreds of clones appeared, all charging the same target from different angles. The Primordial Hollow swatted at them, destroying dozens with each sweep, but there were too many to stop completely. Futile, it rumbled. Your fragments cannot harm me. They're not meant to harm you, Naruto called back as his real body, concealed among the clones, reached the edge of the void. They're meant to distract you. With a final burst of speed, Naruto plunged directly into the empty heart of the Primordial Hollow. The sensation was indescribable, like diving into pure negative emotion, into hunger and emptiness given form. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, but he pushed deeper, seeking the core. Outside, Byakuya and Yoruichi could only watch as Naruto vanished into the entity. The Primordial Hollow froze momentarily, as if surprised by the invasion. What is this? You dare enter the origin? Inside the void, Naruto struggled to maintain his consciousness against the overwhelming pressure of ancient spiritual energy. It felt like being dissolved, his very essence. Unraveling strand by strand. Kit, we can't stay here long, Kurama warned within him. This energy is breaking down our chakra network. Just a little deeper, Naruto gasped, pushing toward what he sensed was the center of the entity, a knot of concentrated power from which all else emanated. When he reached it, he found not a monster but a singular hollow mask, pure white, unbroken, ancient beyond reckoning. Behind it pulsed a consciousness so old and vast it defied comprehension. You have reached the heart of the first hollow, the entity acknowledged. But what do you hope to achieve? You cannot destroy me without destroying the foundation of this world. I don't want to destroy you, Naruto replied, struggling to form thoughts against the overwhelming presence. I want to understand you. This seemed to give the entity pause. Understand? None have sought to understand the origin. Only to seal or subjugate. That's not my way, Naruto insisted, reaching out toward the mask. Where I come from, even the greatest enemies can find common ground if they're willing to listen to each other. As his hand made contact with the ancient mask, something unprecedented happened. His chakra, foreign to this world, shaped by experiences and a reality the primordial hollow had never encountered, began to resonate with the entity's spiritual energy. Not disrupting it as he'd planned, but connecting with it on a fundamental level. Images flooded Naruto's mind, the birth of the spiritual worlds, the chaotic beginnings before separation, the primordial hollow's existence not as a malevolent entity but as a necessary counterbalance to creation itself. He saw its sealing, its long imprisonment, its growing awareness of the worlds that had developed in its absence. And the entity, in turn, experienced Naruto's memories, his childhood of isolation, his growth through friendship and determination, his battles and triumphs, his arrival in this new world and his vision for unity between beings thought forever opposed. Outside, the primordial hollow had gone completely still. Byakuya and Yoruichi stood ready but uncertain, while Harribel and the Arrancar forces watched from Las Noches with equal confusion. What's happening? Yoruichi wondered aloud. I don't know, Byakuya admitted, his Zanpakuto still released but held in check. But the entity's spiritual pressure is changing. Indeed, the oppressive weight of the primordial hollow's presence was shifting, becoming less chaotic, more structured. The countless hollow masks that formed its body began to glow with inner light, and the void at its center, where Naruto had disappeared, pulsed with new energy. Suddenly, a massive shock wave of spiritual pressure erupted from the entity, forcing everyone to their knees. When they looked up, the primordial hollow was transforming. Its massive form was shrinking, condensing, the countless masks merging and reshaping until what remained was a figure merely twice human height, still imposing but no longer cosmic in scale. And from the center of this transformed being emerged Naruto, his body glowing with energy that was neither purely his chakra nor the entity's power, but something new born from their connection. He floated gently to the ground, where Yoruichi and Byakuya rushed to meet him. Naruto. Yoruichi reached him first, concern evident in her golden eyes. What happened in there? Are you alright? I'm different, he replied, looking at his hands which still shimmered with the hybrid energy. But yes, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I understand now. Understand what? Byakuya demanded, still wary of the transformed entity that stood watching them. Everything, Naruto said with a smile that seemed both his own and somehow ancient. The primordial hollow isn't our enemy. It's the foundation of this world, the original spiritual energy from which everything else derived. It was sealed away because the early Shinigami feared its power, but that sealing created an imbalance that has affected both Soul Society and Hueco Mundo for millennia. That's heretical, Byakuya stated, though without his usual conviction. It's the truth, Naruto countered gently. When I connected with it, I saw the history of this world, the real history, not the version passed down through Soul Society's records. The transformed entity approached, its movement now graceful rather than ponderous. Its appearance had settled into a humanoid form with elements of both hollow and Shinigami aesthetics, a white robe reminiscent of a captain's Haori, but patterned with black designs that evoked hollow masks. The one called Naruto speaks truth, it said, its voice now audible rather than mental, though still resonant with power. I was not summoned here to destroy, but to restore balance. The boundaries between worlds have grown too rigid, too separate. This was never the natural state. So what happens now? Yoruichi asked, still tense but no longer in a fighting stance. You tear down the barriers between Soul Society and Hueco Mundo? Not tear down, the entity corrected. Harmonize. Return to a state of balance rather than opposition. This is the purpose Naruto has shown me, unity without uniformity, connection without consumption. From Las Noches, Harribel approached cautiously, her Zanpakuto drawn but not released. Can we trust this, being? I believe we can, Naruto replied confidently. It could have destroyed us all when it first emerged, but instead it sought understanding. It's been trapped in isolation for thousands of years, that would make anyone a little unstable at first. The Hollow Queen speaks wisely to question, the entity acknowledged, turning its gaze to Harribel. Trust must be earned. I offer this as proof of my intentions. It raised a hand, and throughout Hueco Mundo, the transformed hollows that had survived its initial emergence began to revert to their original forms, the black liquid receding back into the sand. A gesture, Byakuya observed, but one that does not address the fundamental question of what balance between realms would mean for Soul Society. The Shinigami nobleman fears change, the entity noted without malice. This is natural. Order has been your strength and your limitation. But consider this, has the current separation truly served either realm well? Endless purification, endless hunger, endless cycle of conflict. Byakuya, Naruto said, turning to the captain. What we've built in Las Noches these past weeks, Arrancar and outsiders working together, finding purpose beyond violence, that's a glimpse of what could be. Not hollows becoming Shinigami or vice versa, but each growing beyond their limitations through understanding the other. The captain's gray eyes remained skeptical, but not dismissive. The captain commander will not accept this easily. Thousands of years of doctrine cannot be overturned in a day. Then we don't try to change everything in a day, Naruto suggested. We start small. A treaty between Las Noches and Soul Society. Diplomatic exchanges. Controlled interaction. Impossible, Byakuya stated, though with less certainty than before. Impossible? Yoruichi challenged with a grin. You're standing in Hueco Mundo having a civil conversation with a Hollow Queen, an interdimensional shinobi, and a literal primordial hollow. I'd say, impossible, left the building a while ago. Despite himself, the barest hint of what might have been amusement crossed Byakuya's face. Your point is taken, Yoruichi Shihoin. The primordial hollow observed their exchange with interest. This is precisely what I seek, dialogue where once there was only conflict. The young one has shown me a different path forward. I still don't understand what happened in there, Yoruichi said, looking between Naruto and the entity. How did you connect with it? My chakra, Naruto explained. It's foreign to this world, neither Shinigami nor hollow energy. When I reached the core of the primordial hollow, my energy served as a kind of bridge, something that could interact with its power without being consumed by it. And Kurama helped too. The nine-tailed one, the entity acknowledged. A being of similar nature to myself, though from a different reality. Ancient, powerful, once feared and isolated. So what now? Harribel asked, practical as always. What does this mean for Hueco Mundo? For Las Noches? Naruto looked at the transformed entity, then at Byakuya, then at Yoruichi and Harribel. In that moment, he saw the potential future of this world, not perfect, not without challenges, but fundamentally changed for the better. Now, he said with growing confidence, we build something that's never existed before, a true bridge between worlds. Starting with Las Noches as a neutral ground where Shinigami and Arrancar can meet as equals. The Captain Commander will never agree, Byakuya insisted. Then we give him a reason to reconsider, Naruto countered. Show him the benefits of cooperation rather than eternal conflict. The primordial hollow's emergence changes everything, Byakuya. Soul Society can either adapt to this new reality or be left behind by it. The captain was silent for a long moment, weighing duty against the evidence before him. Finally, he sheathed his Zanpakuto. I will report what I have witnessed to Soul Society. That is all I can promise. That's a start, Naruto acknowledged with a grateful nod. Sometimes that's all we need, one person willing to carry a message others don't want to hear. As they prepared to return to Las Noches to begin planning this new endeavor, Yoruichi fell into step beside Naruto. That was either the bravest or craziest thing I've ever seen, she said quietly. Diving into an ancient entity of unknown power. Not even I would have attempted that. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, Naruto replied with a shrug. It's worked out for me so far. So far, she agreed, her golden eyes studying him with new intensity. But you're different now, aren't you? Your spiritual pressure has changed again. Naruto nodded, looking down at his hands where traces of that new energy still flickered. The connection with the primordial hollow changed something fundamental in me. I can feel it, like my chakra and this world's spiritual energy have fully integrated now, with a third element added from the entity. Should I be concerned? Yoruichi asked, only half joking. Naruto's smile was warm and genuine. No. If anything, I understand this world better now. I see how everything connects, how the barriers between Hollow and Shinigami are more constructed than natural. Ahead of them, Harribel was engaged in intense conversation with the transformed entity, while Byakuya walked slightly apart, already composing his report to Soul Society in his mind. They're an unlikely group of allies, Yoruichi observed, following Naruto's gaze. The best ones usually are, he replied with a chuckle. Back in my world, my closest friends included a guy who once tried to kill me, a former enemy who became like a brother, and a beast everyone feared that became my partner. Speaking of partners, Yoruichi said, her tone shifting subtly, I couldn't help noticing how concerned Harribel was about you facing the primordial hollow alone. She's a good ally, Naruto replied carefully. Just an ally? Yoruichi pressed, a teasing glint in her eye. Naruto felt his cheeks warm slightly. We've been working closely together since I arrived. She's amazing, strong, loyal, protective of her people. Yoruichi hummed non-committally. And what about us? We've been working pretty closely too. The directness of the question caught Naruto off guard. He looked at Yoruichi, really looked at her, taking in the grace of her movement, the intelligence in her golden eyes, the strength and confidence she exuded. You're pretty amazing yourself, he admitted honestly. I wouldn't have survived my first days here without you. And the way you fight, the way you understand both worlds. I've never met anyone like you. Good answer, she said with a smile that made his heart beat a little faster. Though I notice you didn't actually answer my question. I'm still figuring things out, Naruto confessed. Everything's happened so fast since I arrived here. Fair enough, Yoruichi acknowledged, her smile softening. But don't figure too long, Naruto. Some opportunities don't wait forever. With that cryptic comment, she increased her pace to catch up with Byakuya, leaving Naruto to wonder about the complexities of relationships in this new world, and how his feelings for both Yoruichi and Harribel had grown from respect into something deeper without him fully realizing it. As they approached Las Noches, the fortress no longer appeared as a stark white bastion against the endless night of Hueco Mundo. Instead, with the primordial hollow's presence changing the very spiritual fabric of the realm, the structure seemed to pulse with new life, a beacon not of isolation, but of potential. For the first time since arriving in this strange world, Naruto felt something beyond determination or duty. He felt hope for this realm, for the beings who inhabited it, and for himself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, this unlikely alliance of former enemies united by a vision of something better. And perhaps, in building this new future, he might find not just purpose, but happiness as well. The days following the primordial hollow's emergence were chaotic but productive. Las Noches buzzed with activity as Arrancar, Shinigami from Byakuya's squad, and the transformed entity, now calling itself Origin, worked to establish new protocols and understanding. Byakuya had sent most of his squad back to Soul Society with a detailed report, while he remained with a small contingent to observe developments. His presence lent legitimacy to the proceedings that might otherwise have been dismissed by Soul Society as hollow trickery. Naruto found himself at the center of it all, mediating disputes, offering suggestions, and often simply listening as centuries-old adversaries attempted to find common ground. The work was exhausting but deeply satisfying. "You need to rest," Harribel said firmly, finding him late one night still reviewing plans for a joint patrol system. "Even with your stamina, you have limits." "Just a little longer," Naruto replied, stifling a yawn. "We're making real progress with these patrol routes. If we can get Shinigami and Arrancar working together in the field, they will still be there tomorrow," she interrupted, placing a hand on the papers he was studying. "Your exhaustion helps no one." Naruto looked up, meeting her green eyes. In the weeks since his arrival, he'd come to read the subtle expressions behind her mask fragment and high collar. Right now, her concern was evident. "You're right," he conceded with a tired smile. "I just want to make sure everything's in place before Soul Society sends their response to Byakuya's report." "You've done what you can," Harribel assured him. "The rest depends on whether Soul Society can overcome millennia of prejudice." Naruto stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of sitting. "You know, for someone who supposedly evolved from a creature of pure instinct, you've got a lot of wisdom." "Age brings perspective, even to hollows," she replied with the barest hint of amusement. "And I was watching you work yourself to exhaustion." They walked together through the corridors of Las Noches, now bustling with activity even at night. Arrancar nodded respectfully as they passed, some still adapting to the idea of their leaders walking among them rather than ruling from above. "It's different now," Naruto observed. "The atmosphere has changed." "Hope will do that," Harribel said quietly. "You've given them something many never had before, a future beyond mere survival." "We did that," Naruto corrected. "You took a chance on me when I first arrived, remember? Most would have just attacked the weird outsider. I recognized something in you," she admitted. "A strength that came from protection rather than predation. It was familiar." They reached the balcony where Naruto often went to think, a high point overlooking the desert, now transformed by Origin's presence. The sands glittered with faint blue light, and crystalline formations had begun to grow, beautiful and alien. "It's changing out there too," Naruto noted, leaning on the railing. "Hueco Mundo doesn't feel as empty anymore." Origin explained that the realm is returning to its original state, before the harsh separation of worlds forced it into eternal night and barrenness. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the subtle transformation of the landscape. Then Harribel spoke again, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "May I ask you something personal, Naruto?" "Of course. Do you still seek to return to your world?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so busy with immediate concerns that thoughts of home had receded somewhat. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Part of me will always miss the Leaf Village, my friends there. But here." He gestured at the changing landscape. "I'm making a difference here in ways I never imagined. And I've found connections I wasn't expecting." His eyes met hers on those last words, and something unspoken passed between them. "I'm glad," Harribel said softly. "Las Noches would be diminished by your absence." "Just Las Noches?" Naruto asked, surprising himself with his boldness. Harribel's eyes widened slightly, then softened. No, she acknowledged. Not just Lost Noches. The moment hung between them, charged with potential, until a familiar voice interrupted from the doorway. Am I interrupting something? Yoruichi asked, leaning against the frame with casual grace. Yes, Harribel replied frankly. No, Naruto said simultaneously. Yoruichi laughed, the sound bright in the night air. Well, that's perfectly clear. She joined them at the railing, her golden eyes reflecting the subtle lights from the desert below. I bring news, though. Byakuya received a preliminary response from Soul Society. Naruto immediately straightened. What did they say? The Captain Commander is dispatching a research team led by Captain Yucatake, one of the more moderate captains, to verify Byakuya's findings about origin and the changing spiritual landscape. That's better than I expected, Naruto admitted. I thought they might just send an execution squad. Oh, they wanted to, Yoruichi confirmed with a wry smile. But Byakuya's report was apparently so methodical and irrefutable that even Yamamoto couldn't dismiss it outright. When will they arrive? Harribel asked, seamlessly shifting from personal to strategic concerns. Tomorrow, Yoruichi replied. Byakuya is setting up appropriate protocols for their arrival. He suggested you both be present, along with Origin, to present a unified front. Of course, Naruto nodded. This could be the breakthrough we've been working toward. It could also be a more sophisticated form of reconnaissance before an attack, Harribel cautioned, ever pragmatic. True, Yoruichi acknowledged. But Yucatake is reasonable, thoughtful. If anyone from Soul Society can see the potential here rather than just the threat, it's him. Their conversation was interrupted by a subtle tremor that shook Lost Noches, not violent like those that had heralded Origin's emergence, but strong enough to notice. Another one, Naruto observed. That's the third tonight. Origin says they're aftershocks from the realignment of spiritual energies, Yoruichi explained. Nothing to worry about, supposedly. Unless they're not aftershocks but precursors, Harribel suggested grimly. To what? Naruto asked. Unknown, she replied. But significant spiritual disruption often attracts attention. You're thinking of the Minos Grande concentrations near the forest of Minos, Yoruichi guessed. Grimjow's patrol reported unusual activity there. Harribel nodded. The lower hollows respond instinctively to spiritual disruption. They gather, feed, evolve. If Origin's emergence is causing widespread instability, we could be facing a wave of evolved hollows, Naruto concluded. And with Soul Society's delegation arriving tomorrow, the timing could be problematic, Yoruichi agreed. Perhaps we should. Whatever she was about to suggest was cut off by a massive spiritual pressure that slammed into Lost Noches with physical force. This was no gentle tremor but a tidal wave of power that cracked walls and sent unprepared Arrancar to their knees. That's not Origin, Naruto said immediately, golden chakra flaring around him protectively. No, Harribel agreed, her hand moving to her Zanpakuto. This feels like multiple Vasto Lord-class hollows, Yoruichi finished grimly. And they're heading straight for Lost Noches. They rushed from the balcony to the fortress's main control room, where Grimjow was already barking orders to defensive teams. Byakuya stood nearby, his usual composure intact but his hand resting on his Zanpakuto's hilt. Status report, Harribel demanded as they entered. At least 5 Vasto Lord approaching from the forest of Minos, Grimjow reported tersely. Plus dozens of Ajuchas and hundreds of Jillians behind them. It's like a fucking migration. They're being drawn to the spiritual pressure changes, Byakuya observed. Like moths to flame. Where's Origin? Naruto asked, not seeing the transformed entity. Outside, Grimjow replied. Said something about greeting the children. Children? Yoruichi repeated with alarm. These aren't children, they're the most dangerous hollows in existence after the Arrancar. To origin, they're all derivatives of its power, Byakuya reminded them. But that doesn't mean they share its evolved perspective. Another shock wave of spiritual pressure hit Las Noches, stronger than the first. We need to get out there, Naruto decided. If these Vasto Lord attack Origin, or if Origin tries to reabsorb them like it did those transformed hollows. Catastrophic spiritual discharge, Byakuya concluded. The backlash could destroy Las Noches and everything within miles. Grimmjow, keep the defensive perimeter intact, Harribel ordered. No Arrancar is to engage directly unless attacked. This is about containment, not conquest. The blue-haired Espada looked like he wanted to argue but nodded sharply. Fine. But if they breach the walls, all bets are off. Agreed, Naruto confirmed. Byakuya, can your remaining squad help coordinate with the Arrancar forces? They have experience with hollow containment. The captain inclined his head slightly. They are at your disposal for this emergency. Then let's go, Yoruichi said, already moving toward the exit. Before Origin does something well-intentioned but catastrophic. The four of them, Naruto, Yoruichi, Harribel, and Byakuya, rushed to the outer walls of Las Noches. What they saw from the battlements froze them momentarily in place. Origin stood in the desert, its transformed figure radiating calm despite the approaching horde. Before it, arranged in a perfect semicircle, were 5 figures of various shapes but uniform power, the Vasto Lord, the highest evolution of hollow kind. Behind them stretched the army Grimmjow had described, Ajuchas, Jillians, and lesser hollows in uncountable numbers. It's not attacking, Yoruichi observed with surprise. None of them are. They're communicating, Byakuya realized. On a level we cannot perceive. Naruto closed his eyes, reaching for the connection he'd formed with Origin during their merging. Through that tenuous link, he could sense fragments of the exchange, not words but concepts, feelings, ancient recognitions. Origin is, explaining itself, he reported, eyes still closed in concentration. Showing them the potential for evolution beyond their current state. Some are receptive. Others are resistant. The Vasto Lord especially, they've spent millennia at the pinnacle of hollow evolution. The idea that there's something beyond that is, challenging for them. Can you influence the exchange? Harribel asked. Naruto nodded slowly. I think so. Through my connection with Origin. Be careful, Yoruichi cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. Your mind isn't designed to process communication at that level. It could overwhelm you. I have to try, Naruto insisted. This could determine whether we face new allies or an army of the most powerful hollows in existence. He closed his eyes again, focusing on the link with Origin, pushing his consciousness along it like following a thread through darkness. When he reached the other end, he found himself in a space that wasn't physical, a plane of pure spiritual communication where Origin and the Vasto Lord existed as patterns of energy rather than bodies. I am here, Naruto projected into this space, his own consciousness appearing as a golden flame among the swirling spiritual patterns. The Bridgewalker joins us, Origin acknowledged. The children resist change. They fear loss of self. The Vasto Lord didn't communicate in words, but their spiritual patterns radiated suspicion, aggression, and deep-seated fear of absorption, of losing their hard-won individuality back into the primordial soup from which they'd evolved. You won't lose yourselves, Naruto assured them, directing his thoughts toward their patterns. Evolution doesn't mean erasure. Look at the Arrancar, they evolved beyond traditional hollow form but kept their identities, their powers. One of the Vasto Lord's patterns shifted slightly, curiosity bleeding into the suspicion. It formed a concept question that Naruto understood as, what becomes of us in this new order? You become more than you are now, Naruto answered. Not less. You gain choice beyond hunger, purpose beyond consumption. They can become complete again, Origin added. The separation that causes eternal hunger can be healed. Another Vasto Lord pattern flared with what Naruto recognized as rage denial defiance. We are apex predators, we need no healing. Even predators can evolve, Naruto countered. In my world, I bonded with a being of pure destructive power. Together, we became something greater than either could be alone. He projected memories of his journey with Kurama, from antagonism to partnership to friendship, letting the Vasto Lord experience the evolution of that relationship and its benefits. The patterns shifted, communicated among themselves in ways Naruto couldn't fully comprehend. Then, slowly, 3 of the 5 moved closer to Origin's pattern, signaling acceptance, or at least willingness to learn. The other 2 withdrew, their patterns radiating rejection and hostility. 3 accept the new path, Origin observed. 2 reject. This is the nature of choice. What about the lesser hollows? Naruto asked, sensing the vast presence of the horde behind the Vasto Lord. They follow the strongest, Origin explained. They will divide as the Vasto Lord have divided. Naruto understood the implications immediately. We'll have conflict. Inevitable. Growth requires resistance. Choice demands opposition. But the seed is planted. With that cryptic statement, Origin gently pushed Naruto's consciousness back along their connection, returning him to his physical form on Las Noches' wall. He gasped as awareness slammed back into his body, stumbling slightly. Yoruichi caught him before he could fall. Naruto. Are you alright? Yeah, he managed, blinking as the world came back into focus. Just disorienting, jumping between planes like that. What happened? Harribel asked, her concern evident despite her controlled tone. 3 of the Vasto Lord have agreed to join Origin, to learn the new path. 2 rejected it completely. The lesser hollows will split along those lines. Meaning we face only 2 Vasto Lord instead of 5, Byakuya observed. A significant improvement in tactical outlook. But still a serious threat, Yoruichi cautioned. Vasto Lord are incredibly powerful, and they'll have an army of lesser hollows with them. Below, the situation was physically manifesting as Naruto had described. 3 of the Vasto Lord moved to stand beside Origin, while 2 retreated to the head of the remaining horde. The lesser hollows were visibly splitting, some moving to join Origin's group, others remaining with the resistant Vasto Lord. They'll attack, Harribel predicted, watching the opposition forces regroup. Their nature demands it. Rejection of the old order cannot go unchallenged. Then we defend, Naruto stated firmly. But we aim to subdue, not destroy. Every hollow has the potential to change, just as I've seen in Las Noches. A noble sentiment, Byakuya commented, drawing his Zanpakuto. But one that may prove impractical in the heat of battle. Nevertheless, it's our approach, Naruto insisted. We're trying to build something new here, not just repeat the old patterns of destruction. The resistant Vasto Lord were gathering massive spiritual energy, preparing for an attack. Origin's group formed a protective line before Las Noches, the 3 converted Vasto Lord at the center. We should join them, Harribel said, drawing her own Zanpakuto. A united front. Naruto nodded, golden chakra already flaring around him. Together. The 4 leapt from the wall, landing beside Origin just as the first attack launched, a concentrated beam of devastatingly powerful Zero from one of the resistant Vasto Lord. Origin raised a hand, splitting the beam around them like water around a stone. Impressive, Yoruichi acknowledged, her body already glowing with Shumko energy. They fight out of fear, Origin stated calmly. Fear of change, fear of loss. We must show them that evolution brings gain, not erasure. Easier said than done, Naruto observed as the entire opposing force began to advance. But worth trying. The battle that followed was unlike anything Hueco Mundo had witnessed before. On one side, the unprecedented alliance of Origin, converted Vasto Lord, Arrancar, Shinigami, and Naruto. On the other, the conservative force of hollows fighting to preserve their understood order. Naruto found himself facing one of the resistant Vasto Lord directly, a serpentine creature with multiple arms and a mask resembling a demonic samurai. Its speed and power were extraordinary, forcing Naruto to call upon his full hybrid abilities. "You cannot change what we are," the creature hissed, its voice the first Naruto had heard from a non-Arankar hollow. "Hunger is our essence. Predation our nature." "You're more than your hunger," Naruto countered, dodging a lightning-fast strike and countering with a Rasengan that the Vasto Lord barely evaded. "You're speaking to me, reasoning, arguing, those aren't the actions of a mindless predator." Nearby, Harribel had released her Resurrection, becoming a vision of power as water-based attacks flowed from her transformed blade. She fought alongside her fraction against waves of lesser hollows, protecting Las Noches with methodical efficiency. Yoruichi danced through the battlefield with breathtaking speed, her Shunko making her appear as a comet of white lightning striking key targets with precision. Where she passed, hollows fell unconscious rather than destroyed, her mastery allowing for incapacitation rather than death. Even Byakuya, traditionally bound by Soul Society's mandate to purify hollows, was adapting his approach. His Senbonzakura formed barriers and bindings rather than its usual cutting attacks, containing threats rather than eliminating them. Origin and its converted Vasto Lord faced the second resistant leader, a hulking, bear-like entity with unmatched physical strength. Their battle was more spiritual than physical, waves of pressure and energy radiating outward with each exchange. Naruto's opponent grew increasingly frustrated as the fight continued. "Why do you resist the natural order?" "Hollows, something went wrong with this response, please try again. Move forward and write the next chapter. Start working on the next chapter." The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.